everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. This is Candice Marie. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy Saturday, everyone. We are going to be doing live astrology readings on the channel. Those of you guys who are new to my channel, welcome. We alternate every other Saturday between tarot and astrology readings. This week is going to be astrology. There's a QR code somewhere around here. It's $40 donation to ask one specific question about your astrology, whether that's a natal placement or a transit. In order to do that, please put this information in the memo. I need your first name, time, date, location of birth, AM and PM, as well as the country. You can find that information on your birth certificate. Some of you guys are already astrology enthusiasts, so you already know that information. Please put that in the memo because we have about 10 people that sign up before we even get into the live. And for me to sit here like an old lady and punch that in is going to drive you guys crazy. So if you guys put that information in advance when you make the purchase, rather than putting it in the text box, I have to scroll all the way up through that and everybody has to wait. So I hope you guys understand. It makes it a little bit easier. I know some people are new, so no worries. I also take level 3 subscribers first. So I saw that Stephanie's here. Looks like Paula's here. Of course, you guys, I will take care of you. And then we usually take about 10 slots. So we've only got spots for like 2 other people. So if 2 other people want to make donations, they want to get in the queue, then we might probably close them off because we're going to have quite a few. Obviously, it's like full moon vibes. Everybody's kind of bugging out. So hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully you're doing well. Big shout out to all of my members. Big thank you to all my level 2 and level 3 people. And I also just want to remind our level 3 people, Deanna, Paula, Stephanie, Claudia, Steve, Emma, Nancy, and Jessica. Thank you guys for being a level 3. That's the benefit of being level 3. You're going to get a reading once a month included in your membership, and you support the channel. So yes, we can take Stephanie and Paula. Is there anybody else here that's level 3 that wants me to add you guys onto the list? Please let me know. I'll pull you guys up. Looks like you want me to ask a question about your sun, so I can put that information in for you, Steph. You guys can ask whatever you want. So if you have a question about transits, a specific transit, how the full moon is affecting you, how the retrograde is affecting you. Sometimes we can also take a look at just like major transits. Please try to be specific. People who ask 2 or 3 questions, I'm going to pick one. Or if you just ask me a very general, like what's the next 6 months look like, you're going to get a very general response. So we have to kind of do this just to make the most of time. And I can go on and on about a chart. But I want to be able to answer your guys' specific questions. Those of you guys who already submitted, thank you. Let me go ahead and plug in the information that we have for Stephanie's sun really quick. Looks like it's 3/31/2015. And that was at 11:41 a.m. Omaha, Nebraska. What do you see that's important for your sun? In terms of transits right now, is that your question? Or are you talking about important aspects? Thanks, Paula. I will get you next. Don't worry. So for March 31st at 11:41 a.m. 2015, this is going to be a Cancer rising, sun in Aries, and the moon is at 29 degrees of Leo. Yeah, okay. Probably one of the bigger things that's kind of going on is that he's got some significant transits. My eyes first go to Saturn that is in Aquarius in his 9th house, and it's in an opposition to his moon. Now it's retrograde, so it's moving away from the opposition. He's not really going to feel it strongly until it gets closer to about the new year. But because this is a chart that's ruled by the moon, Saturn is coming into an opposition with his moon. Saturn is the ruler of his 7th house, so that does represent some kind of challenge in regards to his living situation, sharing his emotions, connecting with family. Saturn rules his 7th house. So I'm wondering if this is like, okay, he has to move, or there's some kind of conversation that's had about, partnering. Saturn can also be about father figures, so it can be like a little bit of a back and forth between living with mom and then spending time with dad, or questioning where dad is. I also noticed that he's got Sun conjunct the South Node. Sun in Aries is nice and it's exalted, and I actually really like the Sun in the 10th house, but the Sun conjunct the South Node, in some situations, they bring in like a lot of passion, energy, desire, like a lot of vitality. But the South Node is a loss, so this can also represent like a sense of like dad not being involved in his life, not knowing who a father figure is, or who's like a masculine figure that he can like look up to, or who is like helping him navigate life. Yeah. So what's happening right now is that Jupiter is very close, right? So next year, between Saturn opposing his moon, which is like, why didn't it work out with you and dad? Where's dad? What happened? Why did he leave? And then Jupiter coming into conjunction with his South Node, it's going to also affect him being like, well, why didn't he stay? Why didn't he want to do the work? Or it can affect the way that he communicates and kind of expresses himself in a masculine manner. Jupiter sounds positive though, so I don't want this to sound negative. It's not negative. It's really going to amplify and kind of show, okay, I have to show up. Like, you might hear him say things like, I'm the man of the house now. Like, I can handle it. I can take care of it. Like, it's really important long-term with the Sun conjunct the South Node to be encouraging him to, to I'm not going to say like be a man, because that's like toxic masculinity, but to be a stand-up masculine individual, right? So it's like, tell the truth, open doors, take other people into consideration. You want to, make sure that you're being a leader, right? This is how you kind of want to talk to him, because he's got that Sun in the 10th house. I wonder, with Jupiter coming into the mix, if this is going to be a teacher, or he goes maybe into like martial arts, or like, little league or something, and there's somebody that comes into his life that's going to coach him in some way. And kind of be that fill-in position, because Jupiter coming into conjunction with the South Node and the Sun means that he might bring people in who are going to help kind of boost him up, and like learn how to be a responsible little man. So I'm hoping that some of those people show up for him. Just know that even when Saturn retrogrades through Pisces in the spring, it's not going to come back into Aquarius. So when it crosses 27, 28, 29 degrees of Aquarius, it's going to be quite intense for him in terms of communicating. I think first there's going to be this feeling of, well, who is my family? Where is my parent? Where did he go? What are my roots? And that can also be extended to his family, right? Like his father's family, and whether or not feminine figures are showing up for him. Like, does he have a relationship with his grandma? Does he know aunties? Does he know cousins? So it might be him communicating or asking questions about why it wasn't just his dad that he's feeling disconnected to, but like a whole kind of like root system in general, if that makes sense. So the Saturn opposition will be kind of intense, January, February, March, then it's going to break. Thankfully, to kind of like soften the blow to that, the Jupiter conjunct the South Node and the Sun is quite positive. Something else you want to take into consideration also is that in the new year, as Pluto is coming into Aquarius, like he's already feeling it now, but as Pluto is coming into Aquarius in his 8th house, it's going to start squaring his Mars. So this also makes me feel like there can be some bullies on the schoolyard, and he jumps in and is like, Mom, this kid was getting picked on and getting beat up on. Like, I couldn't let that happen, This might also bring up some stuff for him, because Pluto rules his 5th whole sign 6th Placidus house. You just want to keep an eye on like his heart health. You want to watch for anger. He can be having tantrums and frustrations if he doesn't have an outlet for some of that stuff. Pluto square Mars, thankfully when you go through some of these squares as a kid, it can be like the first time he gets into an altercation on the playground. Obviously we don't hope that, but it's a lot easier than dealing with that square as an adult. But Pluto will be in a square to his Mars off and on for about a year, year and a half. So that's definitely going to bring up issues with like conflict with like other people. And we want to be making sure that he's learning how to express his anger and frustration in a positive way, rather than getting involved in a situation where there's like bullying. But this is also like psychological stuff. Pluto going through Aquarius in his 8th house. It's like the psychology of like, well, all the other kids are doing it, so do I do it type of thing, you know? Those seem to be the bigger things. I really feel like, he goes to school with my brother too. Okay. Yeah, there's going to be some stuff there. And I would just say, remind him that just because other people are doing it doesn't necessarily mean he needs to jump in too. Look for those teachers, for those mentors, other people who are going to be coming into his life in the new year who can be encouraging him. And also because Jupiter's in the 10th house, it's about being like, you know, if there happens to be things where it's like, bring your father to work day, right? Like he needs to have somebody, bring your father to school day, sorry. He needs to have somebody who's gonna be there, that can be like a positive member of society. So I'm wondering, like, is there somebody from church, or is there somebody from the local fire department, or do you have a family member that's like a police officer, like somebody who's in uniform? I say that because it's Aries and it's the 10th house, who can go with him, or maybe he's going to start having experiences with some of these people where he's like idolizing those types of professions. It could be professional fighters, also firemen. I'm just thinking like Aries. And he may have an interest in anything that's like about like self-defense. So if you want to do that in a positive way, like martial arts, it can be good for him as he goes through that Pluto square Mars. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. All right, so let's pull up Paula. Got tons of people in here now. Sorry, guys. There we go. Paula said she wants to know about her job in general. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so work for you obviously is a little colorful right now because you have Mercury that's going retrograde in Libra. Okay, so it didn't, Placidus-wise, it didn't fully move into your 6th house, but still it's retrograding in the sign of your 6th house, so it's going to kind of give you that vibe of, okay, our schedule's changing. Am I changing my responsibilities at work? Am I feeling well enough to go to work? Things like that. I would have to say things are going to start getting colorful when we see the eclipses that start kicking in. Now, you may feel it more when planets are fully moving into Scorpio. So I'm thinking, well, maybe not. Maybe when we start seeing the planets in Libra coming into a square with Pluto, from mid-October on is when you're going to start seeing like pressure, right? Because the sun, which is about action, going into your 6th, working, busy, showing up for others, Libra, Venus moving in there, it's all going to start making squares to Pluto in your 9th house, which is like, can I balance taking classes or courses or things that I need to do on top of work? Am I keeping the peace with people at work? Are people doing their job? Are they cleaning up after themselves? That kind of stuff. So there's that. The other thing is that once we fully get into Scorpio season kind of kicks off with a bang. It's going to be an eclipse. That's going to be around 2 degrees. That's going to be right on your Mars. I didn't realize we had the same Mars, Paula. That's probably why we're both sassy. But there's going to be an eclipse on our Mars this October. And Mars is technically the ruler of your 12th house. It's also associated with Scorpio, which is intercepted in this chart. Long story short, when you're dealing with an interception, it's when a sign gets swallowed up by a house. So if you notice your 6th house starts with Libra, your 7th house starts with Sag, Scorpio is kind of like no man's land. So if you have planets there, or if Mars happens to be there and then there's an eclipse, something can kind of catch you off guard unexpectedly. So Mars can be things like accidents in the workplace, cutting staff, cutting back, cutting hours, cutting time, right? So heads up, that eclipse that's going to be happening, which you're probably going to be feeling like a week or two early, you really want to watch out for that. The positive to this is, because there is a positive, you have Venus included in this eclipse. So there's an eclipse on your Mars that's like, hey, make time for the things that you want to do. Take time to have a private space where you can be working on things. Also, it's going to be about healing or a private office space or a room that you're working from. And Venus will conjunct Mars. So it's kind of like sweet and salty. I think it's kind of saying like, okay, you know, maybe we do make cutbacks, but like I'm okay with it. Maybe we do have changes in staff, but I'm okay with it. Maybe we do have to have, you know, more strict rules and regulations pertaining to how we're cleaning or how we're getting the work done or whatever. But it's going to create less work for you. There's more responsibility possibly for other people. So things aren't really going to start heating up until closer to mid-October. I would also say that, you know, because Venus rules your 6th house, any transits involving Venus to your natal Venus or transit Venus are important. Well, okay, look at the eclipse. You've got Sun and Venus conjunct with the moon on your Mars. So it is bringing or highlighting anything relating to digestional health, anything with your reproductive organs, you know, dealing with employees. And then you've also got the South Node coming into conjunction with Venus. I will go as far as saying, I have a hunch, this is just me, that probably when Mercury starts coming into conjunction with these degrees, like a week or so later, that there's going to be like this whole like, oh, well, that's changing. Okay, well, then I'm doing this. And that's literally going to be days later when your chart ruler, Mercury, goes into Scorpio, finding all the details, getting all the information about what's really shifting, and it conjuncts Mars. So the last week of October. That's what you want to watch for. And eclipses come in pairs, you know? So then you're going to have this other eclipse that's going to be in Taurus in your 12th house at 16 degrees right on top of your Saturn. Paula, be very careful with accidents at work because 6th house Mars eclipses, people burn their hands, there can be fires, we can cut or sever something. And then I look at an eclipse involving Saturn, the lord of your 9th house of legality, and is square to transit Saturn in the 10th house, there could be like a lawsuit or an accident and somebody's legally like liable for something, right? So I'm just telling you, just so you're aware, because eclipses represent energy that we do not see. It's invisible, and something is eclipsed and then all of a sudden we're like, oh wow, didn't see that coming. Even for people like me who I understand eclipses, I'm aware of them, I know how they play out. The last 2 eclipses that have happened, in retrospect now looking at it, the things that happened were not in my chart, they were in other people's chart. I should have seen that, but it totally caught me off guard. So what I'm getting at is that when we have eclipses, especially in Scorpio and in Taurus, we see crisis, or we see issues with money, or we see some kind of problem. So the writing will be on the wall, I think, before the eclipses. You might start to see the breakdown right when the Sun and Venus are coming into a square with Pluto. So let's say like something's off staff-wise, there's a problem at work, a schedule's not working, people are getting sick, or you think somebody's doing some shady stuff at work, or maybe you're concerned because you're like, okay, if we don't keep this clean, we're gonna have an issue with the health department. I use these terms because it's happening in the 6th house. As it squares Pluto, it's like something that could be morally wrong, legally wrong, right? So if you know that there's a puddle on the floor, don't just tell somebody to clean it up, really make sure it gets cleaned up so we're avoiding some of these accidents. If you know that there's something at work that is broken or it's dirty or it needs to be taken care of, like be on top of it, be proactive. The astrology in mid-October is actually really great right before we get to the eclipses. So if you look hard, both with the squares to Pluto and also the trines to Saturn, you'll be able to spot where some of the issues are and what needs to be fixed and what needs to be worked out. Don't put up with any shit at work, especially if something's not kosher. Like if somebody's doing something that's like illegal, or if they're telling people they have to show up at a certain time but they're not paying them, like something like that, because Scorpio deals with other people's money or resources. There can be some issues with people not getting paid the appropriate amounts, or people getting paid to do jobs that they're not doing, if that makes sense. Long-term wise, okay, we've also got Saturn retrograding back through your 10th house. So there is like a reviewing of what is my responsibility, what do I want to do, what is my path, and it won't really be until Saturn comes into conjunction with your North Node, which you haven't really fully had yet. Has Saturn gone at 26 degrees? Am I crazy? No, it retrograded at 25. So you haven't really, you got a taste of it, right? But it won't be until Saturn, it won't be until Saturn, it will not be until Saturn comes into conjunction with your North Node. that you're going to be like, ah, this is how I'm supposed to be showing up. So that'll be closer to, like, let's say the end of January, when Saturn conjuncts the North Node, and then the Sun conjuncts the North Node, and there's some big decision that is made. Like, okay, now you are the boss, or now you've quit and you've opened your own business. Personally, because the Sun rules your 4th house of home and family, Saturn rules the 9th house of, you know, law, legality, traveling. Like, you might have to take care of a man, and your focus becomes more on something going on at home. Or you might go, I want to stay home and focus on my home business. I don't want to work here anymore. Something like that may happen. Oh, and by the way, now that we're going into the fall, the return of the Saturn-Uranus squares. So we see Saturn in your 10th house squaring with Uranus in your 12th house, where you're like kind of anxious because you want to break free, but you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to be supported? Wait until after those eclipses. Like, I think that if you want to start something new, know that it'll be after the eclipses that we're going to be seeing at the end of October, beginning of November. Also, you know, something like weird happens when Saturn comes into conjunction with your North Node. I don't know if there's anybody else here who has had that experience, if you want to chime in, but my North Node's in Aquarius too, and when Saturn started approaching, I felt like very kind of like, oh, doom and gloom, like, oh, something's coming. And I was like really anxious about it because I was kind of scared. And then when Saturn went past it, I was like, oh, maybe I'm in the clear. And then as it's been retrograding back to my North Node again, I'm like, oh, it was just like that there's some kind of like maturing going on. Like there's like a rising to the occasion and like managing time better and like really stepping into the North Node. So North Node in Aquarius is just weird, different, wacky. It marches to the beat of its own drum. So you want to be aware of that. It's also going to kick your natal Uranus into overdrive. So if you've got Uranus in the 5th, which is I want to play, I want to have fun, I want to experience, create, right? I want to take chances. I want to be self-employed because Uranus rules your 10th house. I have a feeling there's some kind of connection to that, possibly. So, you know, most of the fireworks won't be for another month. Look for some of the stuff that's going on as early as mid-October. And I would say be aware that these particular eclipses that are coming are right on top of planets in your chart. You've got one conjunct your Mars, you've got another one that's going to be conjunct your Saturn. I don't know which one's going to be more challenging. You know, a new moon solar eclipse is a power up. So you got Mars and Venus conjunct. It's like, okay, cool, make time for the things that you love. It's the second eclipse around the 8th that's going to throw you for a bit of a loop. So you might want to look at what's happened in 2020 and 2021. The 3 times that we had the Saturn-Uranus square, what was the theme? You know, was it making the times for the things that you want? Was it overcoming health issues? Were you having some reproductive or digestional health issues? Did that take you out of work in some way, right? Were you really anxious and not really wanting to deal with people at work because you wanted to focus on your own thing? That's kind of the ricochet that you see from the square. And the finale will be really interesting when Saturn comes into conjunction with your North Node at 26. It's about things that you eat, things that are expensive, things that are sweet. It's a Taurus degree. So I have a feeling it's going to be stuff in regards to that chocolate stuff. It's just a matter of making the time for it. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. I'm excited to see what goes down there. All right, cool. Now I get to my list of people. Those of you guys who made donations, thank you. I appreciate it. We're going to go through the list. And I'm positive we have hit 10 people. Yeah. So I'm going to close, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we're closed. We're not taking any more. There's quite a few. All right. So in this order, just a heads up, I've got, is it Anahi, Katie, Ithura? No. Anahi, Katie, Serendipity, Tarot, Camille, Travis, Malaya, Tonga, Courtney, Huey, am I pronouncing that right? Christiana, Aileen, and Sang. But we are going to close it out. So if we can put that on the banner so people know, thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and start with Anahi. All right, so let me pull up your chart because I do have you in here. She says, thanks, Rome. We'll see you soon. Can I get some guidance on what career is going to fit in what I need? I'm currently working for a law firm. I'm unhappy with the amount of hours I have to work. I enjoy what I do. It's just how many hours I have to work makes it not enjoyable. I want to have a career that gives me life-work balance. I enjoy doing it. It pays well. I appreciate your time and effort. Okay, cool. So when I look at a chart and I assess what works for them work-wise, I'm going to look at a couple things. So we're going to look at the 10th house because that's more the career. Then we're also going to look at the 6th house because that's where you're working, okay? So the 10th house, Taurus, ruled by Venus, and you have your natal Venus in Cancer in the 12th house. So part of the reason why right now you're not feeling it is because you've got transit Pluto, which can feel demanding, heavy, toxic, too much, especially Pluto and Capricorn, too much work, right? Too much power struggle, too much overtaking of your schedule, your life is in your 6th house. So you're feeling like, you know, you either are not enjoying the office space, you don't enjoy the long hours, especially Capricorn rules time, and it's in opposition to your Venus. So you're feeling very overwhelmed and kind of in your head because you have Venus in the 12th with where you're working and how you're working. Venus in the 12th in Cancer makes me wonder, like, can you do your work remotely? Do you have to physically be in an office space? Is that feasible? I don't know. I don't know if you work in an office or not, but just looking at Pluto going through your 6th, Pluto rules your 4th, so it may not be feasible. You might have to physically show up somewhere. I don't know. But with Pluto in opposition right now to your 10th house Lord, yeah, you feel a little disgruntled with what you're doing work-wise. Also, you have Uranus that came into a triple conjunction with Mars and also the North Node. And that was at 18 degrees. And so that conjuncted your natal Mars in the 10th. So there's like a sense of, I want you to look back to what was happening in your life, the end of July, the beginning of August, okay? Because that was your Mars return. So that in itself makes me feel like it's a really good idea that you book a session with an astrologer and tell them specifically, I want to look at my Mars return. I don't know if like certain people will do that. I mean, it doesn't take that long. If you want to come and see me, I'll do it. It'll probably take you half an hour for me to fully explain it to you. But the reason why I say this is because that conjunction of Mars and Uranus in the North Node was at 18 degrees. So it was right on top of your Mars. And it's setting the stage for what will be 14, 15 years of a new cycle, okay? Uranus is impatient, kind of blows up. Taurus wants to slow down. It wants to be stable. That conjunction happening on your Mars tells me that it prompted something where you're like, I can't be in an office. I don't know if this is what I want to do forever. Do I need to go back to school? Meltdown, meltdown, meltdown. How much is it going to cost me? But I really want to travel. How do I do this? And so you're kind of working out the kinks for that as a result of that conjunction. I don't know if you feel that, but it's especially intense, right? Because it also has been right in opposition to your Pluto. So there's a lot of you going, but it costs money to live, and these are my home expenses, and I don't really know if it's a smart idea for me to up and make a change because I've got XYZ going on at home. And oh, by the way, it's also been in a square to your natal Saturn in Aquarius and in a square to Mercury. We call this a grand fixed cross. Fixed signs, they're stubborn. We don't like to change. So when you put the pressure of Uranus on Mars, yeah, you're going to feel restless in the workplace. I personally feel like that restlessness is going to send you either to wanting to take courses or wanting to travel because you have Venus in a lunar sign very close to the sun in the 12th house. It tells me you have a hidden talent and it's ruled by the moon, and you have the moon in Sag in the 4th. So if you could find a way of doing what you're doing more so in the comfort of your home where you have your own private home office, I don't mean hanging out working in your bedroom. That's a no-no for this chart. You need to have a separate office space that you work from. I also wonder, like, you would be really good at interior design with that Pluto trine the sun and Venus. You would also do very well if you wanted to focus on anything in relation to, you know, I don't know what you do for a law firm, if you're an attorney or if you're somebody who processes like legal documents, but I think of like the trine to Pluto as like estates, divorces, working on, you know, setting up living trusts and will, like something like that. because you have all those trines to Pluto. So there is a way for you to still do the law stuff, but you're going to have to do it in a different way. You're going to have to like focus on being able to go and do work, possibly even for like nonprofit, because you got Venus in the 12th. But this is a chart that wants to have its own office. You would do well with real estate, and you would do well with interior design. You would, especially because you've got the moon that is in a trine to the ascendant. So, you know, I think that personally, it's like once Pluto comes out of the opposition with your Venus, things might lighten up. But I just want to remind you that you're still going to have Uranus on top of your Mars. And it's going to want to be pushing you to go and learn new ways of being able to develop new talent. Now, okay, you know, Uranus rules your 7th. So you might find other people who want to partner with you. You might have other people who want to start a law firm, or other people who say, hey, come work with us. We'll give you more flexibility. We're going to create our own group, right? That might happen as well. I wonder if it would if it would be good for you to learn about relationship law or divorce or settlement or mediation, because we're also looking at Uranus in a square with Saturn, right? So honestly, you're in a bit of a holding pattern, I think, just with the square. And probably when Jupiter comes into the 9th and it starts trining your Mercury, you may find next year that there are courses or lessons or other certifications or other things that you can start that is going to bring other ways of being able to make money. This is in the spring, like right around March-ish, when those start trining Mercury, you know? The challenge is that you're going to have the squares to planets in your 6th house, so it's going to affect your schedule, and you're going to be like, how do I do both, right? So whatever you're doing is with the intention to kind of shift gears and shift jobs. The other thing that's interesting is that you also have Jupiter over the next 2 years going fully into your 10th house, and it's going to conjunct Mars. So I look at this and I'm like, look, I'm not telling you to stay with law unless it's really where your heart is. But if you were, things would even be more lucrative in 2023. Now, Taurus is money, finance, right? It's the art. It's art and stuff that is artistic and creative. So I wonder, is there some new talent that arrives, that shows up, especially when we see Jupiter and Uranus in your 10th house sextile your Sun and Venus, you know? Something else can kind of open up there. Now, on the flip side, your 6th house ruled by Saturn, you got Saturn in the 7th in opposition to Mercury. Like, there is a sense of learning, like, to put yourself first rather than other people, like your work, what you need to bring in, rather than appeasing others, whether it's relationships or people you work for. And you have Neptune and Uranus in your 6th house. So inconsistency, freedom, fluctuation in your day-to-day life and in your work schedule, like, you know, energy levels and things that might kind of change and evolve. And those two are retrograde, so you may not realize that you really need a little bit more freedom with your schedule. And they also quincunx your ascendant and Mercury. So there's a sense of being like, there's the job that I do that makes money, but I don't like the schedule. I don't like the way things work. It's like way too rigid, right? So that inconjunct is trying to find a way out. And what's happening right now with Jupiter and Neptune kind of sextiling it, and you'll see this more when Saturn sextiles it, you're going to have an experience over the next 2 years where you're going to be like, do I go with the money and the job that's going to pay, or do I start putting forth the investment or the time or the energy to building something that is going to feel more fulfilling? Regardless, like 2024, to me, it looks like there's really good things on the horizon with Jupiter and Uranus in your 10th house, trining all that cap, trining everything in your with your Jupiter in your 2nd house. I mean, you make money through law because of that. I don't know if it's talking to people, helping people, or documents, but I wonder if there's other facets within the law or legal field that are yet to be explored, basically, or other types of law or other people that you can be collaborating with that's just going to give you a little bit more freedom that you're looking for. But I still want to push you to be working on other talents, because you do have some other hidden talents. And it might just be that you are really great at, you know, investing your money in property and flipping it, you know, and then you sell it or you rent it or whatever. But it also can be working with the arts and visuals and design, because you have those sextiles between Taurus in your 10th and the Sun and Venus in your 12th. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see who else we've got here. I know with the second person, they didn't put AM or PM. So for Katie, can you confirm if that is AM or PM? No, it's okay. No worries. I just wasn't sure. Katie Walker. Katie Walker. (10/20/92) at 9:20 p.m. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Cool. Awesome. Katie, October 20th, 1992, 9:20 p.m., Citrus Heights, California. So you are a 24 degrees Gemini rising, sun in Libra, 28 degrees, and your moon is in Leo. Katie says, full moon in Pisces reading. I think I love Mars in my first. I'm becoming super vocal about my needs and feelings and exercising enough. I was just initiated a convo regarding my salary with my supervisor. It did not play out well. I don't know where the finances will be coming from or when, so instead I'm just trying to focus on ways I can give to others around me. Drama with partner's mother, what gives, it's going to be resolved. And is she going to make way and work with me for us to have a good relationship? Cool. Well, Mars on your ascendant, I mean, yeah, you're going to feel more like motivated, right? I mean, whole sign wise, it's there. Placidus, it's not there yet. So it's in your 12th. And perhaps some of the friction that's been going on recently, when we talk about other people, we're talking about Jupiter. And Mercury is going retrograde, back and forth in opposition to your Jupiter, right? Mercury is you're Mercury. You're like a little beacon for communication. So as Mercury is opposing, okay, you think of putting those two planets in opposite sides of the room and they're looking at each other, but they have their arms folded. They don't always get along. They don't always speak the same language. They see each other, but they don't want to meet in the middle. So obviously, having, Mercury go retrograde in opposition to transit Mercury is going to be a little frustrating. But what's really interesting is that in the midst of the retrograde, as Mercury's going retrograde back through Libra, it will come into conjunction with your Jupiter at 2 in Libra. So it's saying, hey, let's backtrack, let's review, let's reconnect. What are we learning, right, about our relationships with each other? I will tell you, tomorrow is an interesting day. Because the moon's going to come in conjunction with Jupiter, and it's going to oppose Mercury, and it's also going to come into a square with your Mars and also with Uranus. Like, tomorrow is not the day to go toe-to-toe. Your lesson through this Mercury retrograde is to observe. That's all you have to do. You can't really go wrong with Jupiter opposed Jupiter. There is like a multitude of opportunities that I have seen that kind of comes up with that aspect. I'm also looking at when Mercury goes retrograde and then it opposes Jupiter again at 4. This will be September 18th. That's also going to bring more up of like talking with family, talking with mothers, talking with, people in the home. So it's giving you the opportunity to kind of like hash some of that stuff out. Supervisors and stuff, bosses, especially like talking about money. That's more Saturn in opposition to your sun, even though it's not exact, because Saturn rules other people's money, and Saturn by transit, it is in opposition to your moon, which rules the second house. Like, the truth is that between the oppositions and also the squares from the eclipses, there's likely to be friction in terms of how you're communicating with other people about money, period. The key here, I think, is Saturn is going to teach you, get it in writing. Learn how to negotiate. You can't do it now? Okay, cool. Can we set something up where we can, come back to this conversation in a month? Are you going to give me a review at the end of the year? Or is there room in the salary for there to be expansion? If not, all right, cool. Then you reevaluate with the retrograde. So kind of complex in your case because it's not just Mercury retrograde conjuncture Jupiter, which I think is really great. It's going to give you some kind of insight where people are, especially from the family, right? You might get good advice from the family. So you could talk to other people within the family, like find that sagely person at home. Is it a Libra? Is there somebody who has a stellium of planets in the 7th house? Do they have a Libra rising? These might be people who are going to give you good advice. It could also be a Sag because it is Jupiter. somebody who's gonna, sit down and probably have a drink with you and go, what's on your mind? What's up? And you're like, there's this woman at work and she's a nightmare and like blah, 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 blah. Or maybe there is, whether it's your partner or somebody in the family who is like the whisperer to your partner's mom, who like knows how to, like finesse her and like kind of calm her down. And you have a conversation with that person and you're like, look, she's giving me a hard time. What do I do here? You want to use the ability to mediate and partner with other people to be able to better understand others and yourself and how you may come across other people to better kind of communicate. Money-wise, though, lunar transits are going to produce more opportunity for income and resources. The truth is you got Moon square Pluto, so you're no stranger to like having quarrels with people at work or intense communication with people about what you need to survive or what you need for security. So having a Leo moon in general can be loud, very emotional, but in a more action-packed way. And then Moon square Pluto in opposition to Saturn. The name of the game here, because you've got the Saturn opposition, because Uranus is coming into the square, is learning that there are going to be women who are going to engage with you that are going to try to get your goat. Right? And they're going to try to get a reaction out of you. It's going to create a very similar dynamic as some toxic behavior you've experienced with women in general. Something in regards to just exchanges and communicating and where people have a tendency to get intense or kind of like cut you off, right? So as Saturn opposes your moon, you're going to hear from, people, women, whatever, that they can't give you what you need. Then it's going to square all these planets in your 6th house and you're going to go, I'm having a crisis. How do I deal with it, right? Once Saturn gets out of the square, like next in the new year when it leaves Aquarius, it's going to get easier. But you are still going to be still dealing with Uranus in opposition to your Mercury, Pluto, and in a square to your moon. So it's about how you let that affect your body, right? How your body responds to conflict, how your body responds to that stuff. I have Mercury, Pluto too. The opposition, I can't tell because it's so close. Like my Mercury, Pluto, and my Sun are all within 15 to 18 degrees. So it's like a 3-degree orb. So I don't know where it's coming from. When Uranus opposes Pluto, it's pretty fucking intense. When Uranus opposes my Sun, Mercury, I'm just like a conspiracy theorist nightmare. So I can't tell. But the Pluto opposition to me feels more intense and definitely more threatened. So I would say if you're not responding well to Uranus in opposition to your Mercury, which is bringing up family issues, rules your 4th, then be prepared for when it comes into opposition with your Pluto. Something there tells me that something will really pop off and you're like, oh my God, I have this ulcer because I have so much stress from dealing with these things, or it can materialize as like blood issues with your bowels, problems with your reproductive organs, your blood, right? Because it's going through the 6th house. So we don't want to wait until crisis hits because you've been internalizing some of this stuff. So I'm all about solutions. Like what do? You work with Mars on your ascendant, right? Mars on your ascendant is going to trine Saturn. It's going to trine your Sun. It's also going to sextile your moon. So it's about finding the middle ground between being aggressive and also being, standing up for yourself and being assertive. And it's really hard to find that middle ground right now because Mars will square Neptune. So it's like, kind of have to like navigate that, in a way that's like, okay, I'm not overdoing it or I'm not overreacting. I just need to be like super linear. So working with Mars trine Saturn, I think, is like prayer, meditation, hiking, philosophy, having a mentor, having somebody who can work with you, and having Mars trine your Sun is awesome because communication is king. You've got Mars sextile your moon, Mars trine your Sun. Oh, and by the way, you're in the middle of Pluto square your Sun. You're just getting hammered. I know it's difficult, but because Mercury is your chart ruler, see the silver linings in this Mercury retrograde and realize where it's almost like you want to keep your friends close, you want to keep your enemies closer. Rather than going toe-to-toe with people, keeping some people in your corner and just kind of keeping them at bay and just reading them, and also like very much like the art of war and like knowing when to like walk away from certain things and just picking your battles is actually really important, Hopefully that's helpful for you. Good luck. So those are a lot. Those are a lot of transits. I'm wondering, does anybody else have Uranus in opposition to their Pluto or in opposition to their Mercury? Are you guys just as crazy as I feel? Hi, Lynn. You're welcome, Katie. All right, so we've got Serendipity. Ashley, let me pull you up. All right. It's not just me. Everybody was talking about it. I actually think I'm gonna do a video on this. I might just do it for fun, not because people are asking me to do it, because about 25 people were like, this is the Queen's death chart. They were like, the Queen's died. And I'm like, whatever. You know, she's transitioned. Like, what are we gonna do? We can look at the death chart. Obviously, that was one of the ways out. I'm more interested in Prince, or I guess I should say King Charles's chart, because he became king during a void moon. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but I was like looking at it being like, wow, he became the king during the void moon. Yeah, he went through like that whole process where they brought him in and he had to do all this stuff with like Parliament and like the Illuminati people or whatever, the Freemasons, whatever. They're all the same people, the reptilians. But when he became king, it was literally during a void moon, and he's got a Scorpio sun, okay? And it makes sense that he became king. It's not me saying he shouldn't have been king, but Sun Chiron, he's got Saturn square his sun right now, and he's got Uranus in opposition to his sun, right? I have that going on right now. Maybe I'm no longer going to be the astrology queen. I don't know. But and then he's got this Taurus moon. So it's like moon in the 10th house. Pluto's going to square his moon. Saturn's going to square his sun. Uranus is going to oppose his sun. Just bold prediction. I don't think he's going to be king for very long. I'll just say that. I'll do a video on it. Okay, thank you, Ashley. I got you. 10-14. Yeah, and I want to know, who got her corgis? Who got her corgis? That's what I would want to know if I died. I'm like, who is my dog? Oh, man. Okay. So, Ashley, we've got you here. Sorry about that. 10:14 p.m. You are a Pisces rising, sun in Cancer, moon in Leo. Let's take a look. Yeah, I'll do a video on it. I mean, I really shouldn't care because I'm an American and I think the whole family is corrupt, but whatever. All right, so Ashley. I'm going through a child custody battle with my 3-year-old son's father, who's a Libra sun, high conflict case. It's going slow. Initiated in February 2022. The court date is set for September or October. Do you see me winning the case? Primary custody of my son being awarded child support. Currently 50-50 with no child support. I'm trying to move on with my life with my new fiance and get married in May of 2023. Give me your son's information. Please. All of his information. Huh. See, I didn't even know that. He won't be king for very long. There's no fucking way. All right, thank you. 11/27/2018. (7:47 a.m.) Mars, Neptune, North Node, Saturn, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury. Thank you. Let me talk about your chart really quick. This might be like a little bit more complex because really I would want to look at his chart, your ex's information, all that stuff. But your children, right, is going to be, or your child is your 5th house. So you got your Mercury and your Sun there. So you're coming off of several years where you had Saturn opposing, Pluto opposing, right? And so there was some kind of challenge in regards to that. By the way, the moon rules your first child. So you've got Saturn that's finally out of an opposition with your moon. By the way, moon in the 6th house, that's literally law, legal stuff, some kind of fight over of the moon in the 6th house of the child. I think that when you have a really strong transit to your moon, it's going to bring this back up. So I'm thinking about this eclipse that's coming. Let me go to right now. That way we'll make it easier. So you have an eclipse that's going to be first on October 20 something. October here. So you have an eclipse at 2 degrees, square your moon, okay? And it's also going to make a slight opposition to the North Node. So it makes sense that you're going and that you're going to be, you know, dealing with like a child custody issue. But that's going to play out until you have the completion, which is going to be right around here, which is then going to square it again. At the time, the moon is in superior position because it's in Taurus. However, it's in a square to Saturn. So I get the impression that likely, because there's going to be a debate, right, or there's going to be a difference of opinion because of that opposition, they may come back and say something to you like, you know, you guys have to go to mediation, or you guys have to go to court-appointed therapy because of Saturn in the 8th house, the 12th house. That you need to go and like literally, you know, have some kind of observation. Or somebody might ask, well, can we go and speak with the judge in their chambers? They're going to want to have something private. Obviously, your son's not really old enough to like have a say in where he's going to be. That's why I'm saying we'd have to look at his chart. But to me, it seems like having Uranus no longer squaring your moon, having Saturn no longer opposing your moon, having Jupiter, which is also about lawsuits, by the way, coming into a trine with your moon, and Jupiter is the ruler of the 2nd, it is likely that there is going to be something more positive relating to, okay, do I get more time with my son? Does something get paid for? Here's the issue that I'm having, okay? The issue that I'm having is that down the road, when the North and the South Node come into a square with your moon, which is going to be around February of next year, and Pluto goes into Aquarius, which is going to be next spring, like there is a possibility that there is still going to be some back and forth. And that you guys are actually dragging this out a little bit longer. You know, you may go back and forth and talk to a mediator, or you may go to some kind of court-appointed therapy. The judge determines both parents should be seeing the kids. Everything's 50-50. Somebody starts slacking off, or somebody's not happy, or you're dealing with a situation where somebody, you know, wants to have more control of your kid down the road when Pluto comes into the opposition. Like my advice, so you don't have to, so you're prepared if this does continue to keep happening, is probably going to be whatever it is that is decided. Like, you want to stick to what you guys agree to. You should anyway, right? I'm not an attorney, I have to say that, but you should anyway. So coloring outside of the agreement of somebody getting a little bit more lacking in bringing the kid home at a certain time, or, you know, paying for things, or not paying on time, or whatever, like that's going to create a problem down the road. Because Pluto is going to be about law and legality in your chart. It will oppose the moon. So that tells me down the road, let's say if you guys try to be friendly and you guys can't be friendly, and somebody's not abiding by the agreement, especially pertaining to the legal agreement, there could be more drama clear into 2026, Pluto coming into an opposition with the moon. I would say another time period is going to be when Pluto's in opposition to the moon and Saturn is squaring it. That will be again in 2028, right? So at that point in time, you know, he's, I don't know, 2018, right? That's when he was born. So then he's 10 years old. You know, I mean, you just need to be prepared. This might go on for a little while. There can be definitely, when we see oppositions, reversals, right? Reversals. Or retrogrades, reversals. So I'm looking at when Chiron and Saturn go retrograde in opposition to your Pluto, does something change right around the time that he's 10 years old? And perhaps maybe, you know, you're having to do this all over again. I don't like saying this, I'm just being honest with you. Support, if that's really what you're curious about, you know, support is going to be more relating to your 8th house. So that's going to be more relating to Libra. And right now, you've got a Mercury retrograde going on through there. Taking you guys the long way, sorry. You've got a Mercury retrograde that's going to be going through there. And it's technically retrograding Placidus-wise in your 7th. So it's like going back and forth and trying to negotiate, you know, with somebody, talking to your attorney, talking to your lawyer, you know, how do we make this work? I would just say don't let there be anything that's not settled. Like, cover all the bases. If you do end up finding that, you know, you are awarded something more, then you want to make sure that you're following what you guys have agreed to. Because if you don't, it can come back to bite you in the ass in a couple years. I still feel like with that Saturn opposed Pluto square stuff, he may be 10 years old and Dad's still going to be trying to pull some things, to be honest with you. That's the vibe that I'm getting. Also, when Mars is finally going into Cancer next year, after its long retrograde, it will go into your 5th house of children, and it will start opposing Pluto. And it will square the nodes. So one other thing I could see is it could be like you spend a substantial amount of money going and dealing with all of this stuff, only to kind of find out that like it's a wash. You might get the kid and you might get, you know, more time and you might get more money, but you're having to pay for legal expenses because of the square to Jupiter in your 2nd house, right? So I would say be careful with how much you want to extend this in general. Because the moon is literally dealing with what happens with lawsuits or completing legal things. My perspective leads me to believe, looking at the eclipse that's going to be squaring your moon, this is more new things that are happening. So I don't think it's going to be as a result of the eclipse at the end of October here. I think you're going to get your conclusion, or you're going to know what's happening right around here when it goes into Taurus. Oops, a little too far. There we go. When it goes into Taurus and it squares the moon, right? And because the moon is exalted, very likely I think you're going to find that you're going to be like, okay, well, I didn't lose custody. You know, he's still in my primary care, or we still have 50-50, but Saturn in the background of the 12th house is saying there's going to be something that you don't see. So if the judge can't make a determination, if both of the attorneys are basically blaming other people, if both people are fighting for the kid, you have to be prepared that there's going to be a delay, and that this may not be something that gets sorted out until closer to like the first 3, maybe 4 months of 2023. Unfortunately, that's the view that I'm getting. I'm always happy to like look specifically at your son's chart, but to really answer that, we would have to like look at his chart, look at your chart, and ideally look at your ex-partner's chart. But I don't see any harsh squares to your 5th house lord. So that makes me feel like even with a delay, likely you're probably still going to come out the other side, especially with Jupiter coming into your 2nd house in the new year with Venus. Like, even if it takes until February, March, you might actually, with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, you might actually end up getting a little bit more money and having more time with your son. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Come back, let us know. I'm interested to see what happens. I hope that was helpful. I want to be like as specific as I can, and sometimes I have to have more than one chart. All right, so we have Camille. Camille says, Pisces full moon, June 16, 2000, 4:46 p.m. I want your input on what's going on romantic-wise. You're welcome, Divine. Good luck. What is going on romantic-wise? Well, what is not going on? Also, I love the fact that you're getting a reading right when Mars is in conjunction to your Mercury. The seventh house is astrologer, you know, maybe you have two, maybe you have a tarot reader, maybe you have somebody that looks at your astrology, but looking at Mars in conjunction to your Mercury is kind of like such perfect timing for a reading, but you know, that's just how the cosmos are. My dear, you know that you're a Scorpio rising, so you are ruled by Mars, and you are no stranger to intensity or debates or passionate relationships with other people. It can be that these intense exchanges are with siblings or cousins or uncles because you have this in Gemini. It could be that you have these intense exchanges with romantic partners and you like a good like feisty individual or an active individual or somebody who is, they can multitask or they can juggle, whatever. I'm saying all of this because Mars is going to go retrograde in your 7th house. And my eyes get really big because you're 29-degree Scorpio rising. So that is the epitome of Scorpio energy. It's very intense. And then you also have Mars that's now in shadow. So if you haven't seen my videos, go check it out. I did a video on Mars retrograde. Well, Mars in Gemini. I think the title is Mars in Gemini. But I go through all the aspects and I'm like, this is a shit show. Especially if you're a Mars-based chart. So if you're ruled by Aries, Aries rising, if you're Scorpio, Scorpio rising, if you have any personal planets from like 25, 26 to 8 degrees of Gemini, you're going to get rocked. And you're not old enough yet to know any of this stuff. But yeah, basically, long story short, like when you have this retrograde, because you haven't had it as long as you've been alive. We haven't actually had a retrograde that fully went through Gemini. I think it's been like since the 60s or the 70s. I don't know. We had something brief that was in 2008, and it was a retrograde Mars from Cancer. It dipped into Gemini, but it wasn't fully. Mars, when it's in your 7th house, is like you bring out intensity in other people, right? So you can kind of trigger other people. It can be feisty and playful, but it can also be like you say some things and people are like, what did you say to me? And then they become kind of like combative, right? Anybody who's got Scorpio, late Scorpio rising, early Sag rising, you're already feeling this. So it's like if you're probably 14 or 15 degrees Scorpio rising through Sag rising, you're feeling this currently. Mercury and Mars are going to conjunct. So Mars can be a man. It can be somebody very passionate, very athletic, somebody who's texting you, writing you a lot, and it's conjuncting your Mercury. So they're going to be like, let's work, let's get this done. Now it can be clients. So clients can be coming in if you have a client-based business or if you have to work one-on-one with other people, and they can be like very kind of feisty with you, or they can be rubbing you the wrong way, or they can be like coming on to you. Then you're going to have your Mars return, which is going to be right around September 21st. Okay, so pay attention to that day. Mars returns happen generally once every like 18 to 20-ish months. In your case, you're gonna have 3 of them because Mars will retrograde back and then it will go direct and it'll hit it again. So people who have Mars in Gemini, you will be having this Mars retrograde several times, especially if it's within that range. So you wanna look at each Mars chart. I was talking about this with my friend Donnie. You guys saw Donnie Lim on my channel. I was like, what about the people that have like 3 Mars returns? He's like, yeah, you gotta look at all of them. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, but the last one is the one that counts. He's like, yeah, that's the one that's gonna last longer. So long story short, you've got a lot of opportunity here for passion, for fun, for romance, for having exchanges, traveling with someone, working on something. And because Mars is the ruler of the 5th house, it's working on creative projects, right? It's falling in love, going on dates, going on car rides, working on things too, because it's in conjunction to Mercury. So one of the ways to diffuse some of the intense aspects, because it is intense, you can get some people who can just be kind of pissy, is to find partners that are going to motivate you, or you motivating another partner, being like, yeah, we're going for a run, or like we're working on this project together, or like, you know, you're pushing them to be the best versions of themselves, or vice versa. Somebody can be showing up and being like, do it better, do it cleaner, you know, get it together, write it out, work it out, right? So I don't know if any of you guys are having that transit right now. My husband's got Mars and Gemini in the 7th house, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm Mars. I'm like a nightmare. I'm like constantly being like, do this, do that. And if I don't like anything, I get really sassy. So I know that these transits are also happening to kind of encourage us to communicate more. So I would say, watch the communication that you're having with some people in your life right now. Know that this is going to be very active, really between now all the way through February. The retrograde won't start until the end of October. But when it does retrograde, it's going to come back. It's going to hit your Mars again. So you're going to see a second Mars return that's going to be taking place sometimes around early December, the 5th and the 6th. And then it's going to come back into conjunction with your Mercury, which rules your 7th house. It's about changing and transforming the way that you communicate in relationships and being more transparent or being more vulnerable. So it's about, you know, talking about intimacy, but it can also be like talking to somebody about how do I get out of debt, or like how do I apply for a loan, or how do I make the most of my money. It's great for healing. It's great for therapy. It's great for dealing with trauma if there's anything like that that's happened. So if you have a lot of Scorpio risings have trauma. It's just kind of embedded into your kind of karmic agreement when you reincarnate. You're going to go through some shit. So I think that your chart ruler going retrograde through the 7th is like realizing that you don't have to provoke other people, and that sometimes you'll provoke other people unintentionally with words, and that will trigger some things, and then you're bringing up like this pattern of like, oh, people aren't safe type of thing, you know? One other thing I would say for you is, you know, there can be two people. So you can be going back and forth between two people. Sometimes it's like people from the past come back during a retrograde in your 7th. Sometimes you're dating one person, you meet somebody else, you change your mind. We change direction. Like our motivation changes in some sense. So we see makeups and breakups, but we can also see that significant people come into your life during retrogrades, especially because Mars is the ruler of your 5th. So if there is somebody who is meant to be your true love, who's meant to come back to you, they could. If there's something that you really loved doing, a hobby that you really loved doing, you might get back into it. That might be a way that you meet someone. But usually, you know, when it's hitting personal planets, it's pretty freaking specific. So there is something going on there that makes me feel like there might be a multitude of people who you reconnect with or who come back. And it's not always from this lifetime. Sometimes it's karmic. So come back. Let us know how it happens, especially like come like mid-December. I imagine things are going to be pretty colorful in your life, and like some people come back that you would never anticipate or imagine. I would just say be careful with double dipping, you know, more than one partner, people who come in that aren't ready. If you're not available, taking up with other people, it can be really messy because it's going to square your Saturn, and it's also going to square Neptune. And a word to the wise, with Mars retrograde over your natal Mars in the 7th house, as a Scorpio rising in a square to your moon and your Saturn or transit Neptune, if you're in a relationship and you're living with somebody and you're thinking about moving or you're talking to somebody else, like it's going to get really bad. Okay? Don't do that. Secondly, honesty, like be honest about how you're feeling with partners if you're being emotionally overwhelmed, and be mindful that this is a part of your unique signature. You have Saturn and the moon conjunct. So there's some karma relating to your mother, and something's going on here where you're almost working out some of that family drama dynamic of like, I'm not safe, I don't have a home, I'm not loved. Like there's something going on there at that Saturn moon crystallization that can play out through a partnership or a relationship. And I've learned, having Saturn in the 4th, that with the squares naturally to anything in the 7th house, if you're not dealing with the core root issues of home and family drama or mom issues, it will play out in relationships. Like you'll literally bring people into your life that will mirror that dynamic, and Saturn will make you go through it. So sometimes it's better to kind of go, nope, I'm not doing it that way. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to go and deal with it, or I'm going to, you know, work it out with my family. I'm going to cut people off. I'm going to see a therapist, whatever. So you're not attracting those partners, right? Because I think with the moon, with the sun, Mars, square moon, Sun and Mars and Gemini square Saturn and the moon in the 4th. I think like, has there been abuse? Have you attracted partners that come in that kind of tear you down? Does it remind you of your family dynamic? Have you not dealt with some of those patterns? So you think that that's normal, right? Like, is there something like that going on? Because if any of those things are happening, you're gonna you're in for it. You're gonna see quite a bit over the next couple of weeks, and I would say just be mindful of that. Okay. Good luck. Once again, another person come back. Let me know how it goes, because that's what's so cool about getting a reading. You know, like awareness is everything. Like when you're manned with that and you know what's coming, you have the ability to be like, okay, there's the sign. There it is, you know? And that's why you hear people like sensationalize Mercury retrograde and your ex calling you and all this stuff. There's some truth to it, but it's to like let you know like, hey, it's not going to stick. Like when things are retrograde, everything's kind of topsy-turvy. So what we think might kind of stick around doesn't, and what we thought may never be dealt with or we might never find or may never come back generally does. Hopefully that's helpful. I thought it'd be an interesting idea to review predictions you made and see other predictions and how they played out, but I know how busy you must be. Maybe that's a good idea. Good luck with your transit, with your Mars transits. Everybody who has like the Gemini placements are like in the burning the house down phase right now. And then I think the Mars retrograde is going to be like assessing the damage, you know, when Mars goes retrograde. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in, Allison. I appreciate it. All right, so who do we have next? We've got Travis, Malaya, Tonga, Courtney. I know there's other people. I'm just letting you guys know you guys are coming up. So let's skip over to Travis. I laughed so hard because, I don't know if Travis is watching this. I laughed so hard because I read your question first. Like I put your information in, and before I processed your chart, I was like, the question says, what can I expect in 2023? And I was like, this fucking 12th house, Scorpio, Sun, Pluto. Sure enough, Scorpio rising, Scorpio, Sun, and Pluto in the 12th house. Moon in Libra, right? So a lot of what I just said to the last person who I was reading for, relating to the Mars retrograde, partially does relate to you, because both of you guys are Scorpio rising and you have Mars in Gemini in your 7th house. Are you guys soulmates? Your Mars is retrograde. So you are used to reviewing, revising relationships, although I think you have some commitment issues, but I'm not one to judge. And you're asking me, well, what to expect in 2023? So I started laughing because I was like, okay, you want to know about 2023, but still, I hope you took all of that in with what I was saying with the retrograde Mars in your 7th house, because it's going to get a little colorful, but I will take you through a brief synopsis of 2023. So you are turning 32 this year. So you are in an annual perfection year 9, okay? So what you need to know is that the 9th house, whole sign, I'm Placidus, but you have to take into consideration whole sign. 9th house, the bigger picture, traveling, learning, philosophy, teaching, publishing, okay? These are all themes. Mercury is what rules your 9th house. I guess technically, no, it would be well, you have an interception here. Hold on a second. So Taurus rules the 7th. So you're supposed to have, okay, so it would be Cancer. I take that back. I apologize because I'm like, wait a second, where is it? So Cancer rules your 9th house. So you're going to be affected by the lunar eclipses, okay? So your birthday is on the 13th. You want to look at the lunar eclipses that we're going to have in the spring. I'll give you these dates really quick. Lunar eclipses are completions. They're emotional. We are wrapping things up. So you might feel the energy of the lunar eclipse on the 8th still kind of vibrating through on your birthday. But we have a lunar eclipse on May 5th, 2023. It's at 14 degrees of Scorpio. So it's going to be conjunct your Pluto. And then you're going to have a lunar eclipse that is going to be on October 28th, 2023 in Taurus at 5 degrees of Taurus. So it's going to be on the cusp of your 6th house. But I think it's more in your 5th. So it's about love, romance. And it's also going to be possibly about new dating opportunities, maybe children, maybe a younger person that pops into your life. You are going to feel the new and the full moons more strongly this year, okay? So, you know, my astrology teacher told me, a very long time ago. I'm like, what do you do during the years where, you know, you're going to be having a annual perfection year ruled by the sun and the moon? And he was like, you pray. There's not much more you can do other than that. So the moon, emotional, right? The moon relating to the 9th house is philosophy, travel, and you have Libra as the ruler, right? Libra moon in the 10th. So I'm wondering, what are you learning about relationships? What are you learning about travel? What are you learning about philosophy? Do you take a course? Do you go and go back to school? Like something like that could happen. Now you want to also pay attention, like I said, to the new and the full moons, but major themes for you for 2023 is going to be Uranus. That's going to continue to keep opposing your Pluto. From what I've seen for people who have Pluto in the 12th house, Uranus in the 6th house is like a bit of a freak out, because it's like, where am I supposed to be working? How do I work? My style of work is changing. You can also have more liberation, you know, with your schedule. There can be more freedom. You can have inconsistencies with work, and it can throw, especially a lot of Scorpio like this, into a bit of a tailspin. So there's like a sense of being like, all the fears come out, but remember, Uranus wants to liberate you, so it's trying to get you to change your mind. This whole year with Saturn in your 3rd square, all these placements in Scorpio, and also Uranus, is it's trying to get your mind on board with what is possible when it comes to your career. Watch out for bad habits. You're also going to have Uranus come into an opposition with your Sun. That's fun. Sun rules your 10th house of career whole sign. So that's going to be about what you're learning about yourself, what you're learning about your career. Mentors can appear. And Uranus will start to come into an opposition with your Venus. I mean, what do I think? I think that you're going to go through a period at the end of this year where you're starting to kind of really look at, why am I afraid of relationships? Why do I hide? Why am I afraid to be vulnerable? Why do I keep to myself? Why do I keep secrets, right? So you might be asking yourself that because you have the ruler of your 7th house in the 12th. I look at all that Scorpio in the 12th house, Mars retrograde in your 7th. I'm wondering, do you end up in situations where you have more than one person that you're dating? Do you keep those secrets? Are you ultimately afraid of being cheated on or not being treated right? So do you kind of detach? There's like a storyline there. And as Uranus comes into opposition with Jupiter, it's also going to be showing you like where your habits or your hang-ups are actually keeping you, either from your inability to communicate or wrap your head around vulnerability, where it's bringing up bad habits. So it can be eating habits, it can be indulgences, because this is going through your 6th house. So you want to watch how you're eating, what you're doing. Are you drinking too much? Are you working out enough? Stuff like that, because you can see some bad habits come up. Great for entrepreneurs, great for doing your own thing, great for working in new spaces. I actually really think for anybody who's got a lot of Scorpio in your chart, you guys have to understand that like you're going to see the glimmers in 2023 of what's possible. But 2024, when Jupiter and Uranus come together and it starts opposing any of your Scorpio, some of you guys will have it next year, you're going to be like, wow, life is so much easier when I have the support of another person, right? Because it's 7 signs away. So it represents other people. So I'm wondering, do you need healers, doctors, therapists? Do you need to start your own business? Do you decide to take up with a relationship or with a partner? 6th house is the 12th to the 7th. So if you're in a relationship and you have Jupiter, Uranus in opposition to your Sun and your Venus, and that relationship's not working, something may come up there. You have to let me know. I have to be honest with you, okay? From what I've seen, the people who are in relationships with these transits, things kind of blow up. For people who are single and they're like terrified, usually somebody shows up in your life and they're like, let's get the show on the road, we're doing this. And they kind of just uncomfortably ease you into a relationship, and then you realize that life is a lot easier with another person and that you don't have to fight so hard for a relationship, that you can find somebody who's it just fits, you know? I guess in closing, one other thing I would say is that you also do have Uranus and Jupiter coming into a trine with your Saturn. So writing, networking, online websites, communicating, learning, language, communication is really important. And Pluto's coming into conjunction with your North Node. So it's time to really awaken your true talents, especially when it comes to money, resources, technology. I think if you have Saturn and Uranus and Neptune in the North Node in your 2nd house, you came in with a lot of talent. I have Stellium and Scorpio and Capricorn too. They're in different places, but I have the same stellium. It makes us super hyper focused and fixated on things. And if you learn how to work that second house stellium appropriately, it becomes less about money and power and material things. It becomes more about, do I enjoy what I'm creating? How can I live an abundant life by doing what I like to do? How can I make art and money? And I think that with all those placements, they say the generational wealth is actually made with the stellium in your second house. Like these are the people that make money, that's going to make money for the family for generations to come. So you've got a lot of talent here. I don't know if it's in art. I don't know if it's in photography. I don't know if it's in food, investments, but there's something there. And it's going to start getting opened up. You're going to start working some of this stuff up. Okay? So that's 2023 at a glance. Good luck. You're one of those people that I would say, it'd be smarter to get a reading so you know, like overall, like looking at the solar return and a bunch of other things for the year, rather than like trying to do triage 6 months into 2023, going to somebody being like, why is this happening? You know, when you're wielding the knowledge of what's coming, life is a lot easier to manage. Good luck. Happy almost birthday. All right, so we've got Malaya. She says 5/2/2001, and that was at 6:56 p.m. 2 questions, either one. You can pick your top 3 aspects from my chart, or what can I expect the next 3 months? Well, you have the same birthday as my husband. He's a little bit older, but really similar chart. I would rather tell you what I am seeing for the next 3 months, because sometimes I tell people things that I like and they're like, I hate that. So you're a Libra rising, so September, October, November. So Libra rising, you're going to be having obviously a Mercury retrograde happening right now. It's in your 12th house. You'll hear whole sign astrology, it's on your ascendant. Don't cut your bangs. Don't make any big changes to your appearance, okay? As Mercury retrogrades from your 12th house into your 11th house, there's opportunities to reconnect with friends and people who you haven't seen in some time. 2, you want to wait until Mercury comes into conjunction with your ascendant and it starts trining Saturn. Oops, sorry, I keep doing that. And it'll trine Saturn. Why do I say this? Well, it's going to help you communicate, get the point across, communicate what's changing, either about your appearance, your home life. You got some tricky stuff going on. You know, with the Mercury retrograde, it tells me that you're kind of feeling overwhelmed, or you're dealing with some stress or anxiety, you need to rest or recuperate. And you've also got Pluto that's still slightly in a square to your ascendant or your descendant. I would say prepare for possible moving situations, shifts going on within your physical home, in or out of your house, or with your family. I'm also saying that because you're getting ready to have Saturn come back into conjunction with your natal Uranus, and that's going to be happening closer to the tail end of the year, going into the new year. Now you've got eclipses that are going to be taking place at the end of October. And even though it's in Scorpio, because you're a late degree Libra rising, it's going to be very close to your ascendant. So you've got a solar eclipse, which is a profound sudden shift on your ascendant, basically, or within degrees, involving Venus, your chart ruler. That's a pretty big reveal. What is it you want to change about your appearance? What do you not like about yourself? Where can you be kind of yourself and give yourself a little bit more love? What are you reworking in terms of how you want to present yourself to the world, right? That eclipse also is going to be in opposition to your sun, which means that you're changing things about yourself, which in turn is really about kind of building on the self-esteem, and it may challenge existing relationships, right? The other cool thing is that you've got the North Node coming in conjunction with your sun. So I don't know if this is like partnering with somebody at work. I don't know if you're working with somebody that you're dating. I don't know if you meet somebody through work. I don't know if you're in a relationship with somebody and things are really taking off, right, for them. But really cool having the North Node come into conjunction with your sun, because there's like this big pivotal like turning point happening in regards to who you're partnering with out in the world. It can also be just like, surprise, I'm in a relationship, or I'm finding somebody who wants to be in a public relationship, especially with the North Node conjunct your Sun and Juno. Obviously, relationships are very important to you, as with many Libra risings. But I am really feeling that if you're not already in a relationship, there's some pretty significant things coming for you. Especially with Mars going retrograde, which rules your 7th house, and it's going to come into conjunction with your Jupiter. That, for some people, under the right circumstances, North Node conjunct Juno, bringing in partners of destiny. Eclipses in your 7th house, bringing in partners of destiny. Mars, Lord of your 7th house, retrograding over Jupiter in the 9th. It's going to bring in a teacher. It's going to bring in a mentor. You might meet somebody in an airport. You might meet a future significant other if you haven't already. If you have, then it can be talking more seriously about relationships moving into the future. Eclipses on your ascendant can bring pregnancy, okay? Especially looking at Saturn coming into a trine with your ascendant, and it's going to be inching its way into your 5th house. So be careful, especially with Saturn square Saturn. Significant relationships can show up, can be super passionate, but be careful with the pregnancy thing with Saturn square Uranus. Likely you're meeting people who might live in other places, so there's that, or there's some conversation about like where you're living versus where relationships are, right? So something like that can be taking place. I guess one other thing I'll say in closing is that very, very Venusian chart you have here with Libra rising, Sun and Juno in the 7th house, right? So it's hitting the Venus houses. And for Venus in Aries in the 6th and the Sun in the 7th, be careful with like relationships with people who you work with, right? Because I don't know if you've heard, traditional astrology is like Venus in the 6th house is like the people who are your lovers end up becoming your enemies. Like not always, okay? If you work together or if you work out together with that Venus, it can work. So you need somebody who is going to like work with you, if that makes sense, right? But yeah, by whole sign standards, you're going to hear Venus is in your 7th and your Sun is in your 8th. And, you know, maybe it's just me because I'm Libra rising. I'm going through the same retrograde. It was like when it was in shadow, I was like, yes, I'm going to go and like, you know, do this thing with my hair. And then I was like, no, I can't do this. I need to just like wait it out. And now that it's retrograding over my ascendant back into my 12th, it's more about dreams. So the retrograde for you is actually still very much in your 12th house. So there's going to be a lot of dreams and things coming up. Create a vision board with what you want to look like, what the aesthetic is going to be, play with things. Make the decision when Saturn is coming more so into a trine with Mercury. And it'll be right around the time of the eclipse. So maybe that's going to be like the big reveal, you know? Hopefully that's helpful. Let us know what the big reveal is. I just keep telling all the Libra risings, don't cut bangs. You guys are going to want to do things that are trendy and you're going to hate it. So don't do it. Don't do it. All right, we've got Tonga. Tonga B. What's up, Rachel? Tonga says, February 20th, 1975, Baton Rouge, 4:53 a.m. Gotcha. Oh, 4:33, 4:53. Gotta check, guys. Mercury retrograde. There we go. Tonga. Okay. No, I'm second guessing it. All right. I'm not sure if it's possible, but here it goes. I'll give it back up just in case. I'd like to know when my home life is likely going to stabilize because my mom is ill. Suddenly on the day of the North Node Uranus conjunction occurred and things are up in the air with my home and work is precarious. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. So, you know, just here's what's going on, all right? Just being a Capricorn rising, you've got Jupiter, which is the Lord of your 12th house, going retrograde in your 4th house. 12th house is rest, recuperation, people who need help, they need healing. So you have Jupiter going into your 4th, it retrogrades, and you're like, my mom needs help, what do I do? I gotta be there for my mom. I've heard this for probably a dozen or two Capricorn risings. And yes, when you have that Jupiter transit, it opposes Libra in the 10th and it squares your ascendant. And you've also got Pluto coming into conjunction with your ascendant. So I got to tell you something, okay? your job is changing and transforming in some way anyway, like your role and your responsibility out in the world. So even if you weren't having some of these squares and these oppositions, you were still going to be experiencing that with Pluto coming in conjunction with your ascendant. You need lots of water. I would recommend an herb or a supplement called resveratrol, and you need to be taking stuff that's going to help you with stress, okay? Because Pluto can cause a lot of stress. Cells are turning over very quickly. You're dealing with the aging process. There's a power-up period. It's like, I guess the good thing that I can tell you is that the Pluto conjunct the ascendant is pretty much, once we're getting into the new year, even with the retrograde, it's easing up, so the pressure is going to subside. But it's like kind of getting your passport stamped to hell. You're like, okay, I've been to hell and back, like I'm still here, you know? What's going to happen, I think, with the work stuff is as Mercury is going retrograde through technically Libra for a Capricorn rising, it's like what's changing at work, but it's actually retrograding into your 8th where you're like, where can I get support? I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, but I would say that it's really important for you to be talking to your mom about insurance, worst case scenario, if there's a will, like you need to ask these questions, okay? Because Mercury is going retrograde through the 8th house. And it's trining your natal Mercury, ruler of the 8th house. So it's like, Mom, God forbid something happens. What do we do? This is also about looking at ways where if she can get support, Virgo, or help or assistance from some kind of public service or welfare, home health, nursing, whatever, like these are things you want to be looking at. But money in general, Jupiter's going retrograde back into your whole sign second. And it's tricky because Jupiter in the second house is saying it could bring you money or resources. And it's also tricky because you're having eclipses with the south node on your midheaven, ruled by Mars. The truth is that, you know, you may not be going back to work for a little bit. Maybe until after the new moon in Libra. But I'm really feeling like when the Sun and Mercury and Venus are all trining from the 10th house to your second house, which will be right around mid-November, because you're feeling emotionally more capable, you're more available, more inspired, resources can come in, okay? So, I mean, you're looking at, it could be about 2 months-ish. In the midst of that, you've also got Mars, the ruler of your 10th house, going retrograde in the 5th, which is like, am I trying to do more than one job? Am I trying to do a side hustle? Like, what can I be doing to bring something in, like, on the side? Like, what can I do to be, like, crafty, right? And, like, literally, it could be crafty, quite literally. In the midst of all this, Uranus is going retrograde through your 4th, coming back into conjunction with your IC, which does bring up lots of, like, unexpected sudden things in regards to home and family dynamics and things like that. So I'm wondering, like, do you have to physically go and be with your mom? Are you already there? Like, what's going on, you know? Because in cases like this, especially with Saturn coming into conjunction with your sun, it's the precursor. Saturn, technically your sun's in the 1st house, so you want to watch your health in the new year, but when it crosses, it's whole sign second. So it is kind of the precursor for if you don't handle things appropriately now, yeah, things could be even more challenging financially for you actually in the spring of next year. What's interesting is you've got eclipses going through your 3rd house, going into your 4th house. To me, this is saying, like, come spring of next year, you're moving. You're moving back home, you know, you're moving in with your mom. I know that may not be what you want to do, but the North Node and the eclipses and Uranus all being there, like, literally to me screams, you go back home, you're closer to family, it's more affordable. Yeah, you may not want it, but it's going to give you the freedom to, like, start a side hustle. Especially with Jupiter Uranus, like if you're wanting to be self-employed or if you're wanting to do something that's more creative, like it's going to give you the space to do that. As Pluto goes over your ascendant and you're focusing really on being able to tune in to change and transformation. It's probably a really good time to start doing a lot of like shadow work and like working with Pluto and like reflecting on how you handle change and how you deal with change. Like, you know, your living situation stuff, it's going to get a little rocked here with this eclipse. This one, because it's 4th house and it's going to square Saturn and it's going to oppose your 10th house. Like personally, because the moon is coming to the most southern part of the chart, I think it's most important for you to make sure that you're being with your mom in the beginning of November, because I've seen some eclipses like this with squares to Saturn materialize as like, oh, you know, now mom needs home care, or like now she is bedridden, like something like that can happen. I'm not going to speculate because I don't have a chart. And it's intensified because of that square to Saturn. And I would say like, you can only do so much. So processing and working through the pressure and the grief with all that Capricorn is like hiking, stretching, yoga, anything that's going to kind of move it out of your body. So you're not like busting at the seams in November being like, I can't take it anymore, if that makes sense. And if you're shifting from cool therapy to something more spiritual, you can definitely do that stuff. Yeah, rehab hospital. Possibly Jupiter going retrograde can bring her back home. Like she can come back home, or she'll finally transition in a couple of months' time by spring of next year, and you could be with her. It's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. But if you're like, okay, she's in a rehab, she's in the rehab, but she's not at home, but I got to pay bills, but I'm not working, like, could you stay at her house while you're waiting for her to come back? I know that might not be ideal, but that's the solution that Jupiter is giving you, because it's giving you the sacred space to be able to have the peace and quiet and not having to worry, and you can be home and you can work on things, you know? That's most likely what's going to happen, even though I know that's probably not what you want to do. And with Mars going retrograde over your moon, it's about, hey, how do I drum up more business? How do I bring in more clients? You know, how can I get some things going so that way I can kind of move with the flow of things kind of being in limbo. Hopefully that's helpful. Yep, perfect. Yeah, you're already kind of doing it. That Pluto transit is very intense, and I would say that ancestral work can help too, you know, especially because Pluto on the ascendant, you bring lots of ghosty things around. So ask them for some help. Obviously, you got to give them something. They like sugar and coffee and tobacco and food and stuff, but if you ask them for assistance, usually they'll show up. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I've got Courtney, Hugh, Christiana, Aileen, Sang, and then another Aileen. I think there's two. Maybe was there two questions? All right, so let's pull this up here. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it as always. Okay, so Holly, I need that information from you. I know you had it at the beginning of the chat, but let's see, where is it? 10/11/82. So let me put this in. Oh, Courtney, excuse me, Courtney. I was looking at your last name. 10/11/82. Okay, so that is 5:04 p.m. And that was in Olympia, Washington. All right. Which one was it? 10/11, 10/11. There we go. Oh, I guess I had you in here, huh? All right, let's see what your question is now. You said you had a Libra moment. I've been struggling with making money since having a baby. He's now 2. I'm feeling stuck. Been dealing with health stuff and physical pain. What should I be doing to make money? I really enjoy. What's up, Brandon? I like the new name. I boof toad venom. The Buffalo. Oh, I like that. That's great. Obviously, somebody's doing their shamanic journeying. Thanks for joining us and gracing us with your presence here on Saturday night. All right, Courtney. So your Pisces rising, sun in Libra, and your moon is in Leo. Telling me that you're having some struggles with making money since having a baby and feeling stuck, dealing with some health stuff. Well, what's going on with your sun? Saturn's in a trine to your sun. So where intention goes, energy flows. So let's get out of the habit of saying, I'm having health problems. Even if you're having challenges, okay? Intellect, communication, thoughts, because you have Saturn in your 12th house trining your sun. It's saying as long as you have rest and recuperation, as long as you have some private time, to pray, sleep in, not have anybody bother you. Like moms need naps too. That trine to your sun is helping, okay? Trines can be free-flowing energy. Believe it or not, 18 degrees does bring up health problems. It's just, it is what it is. So be thankful you're having a Saturn trine and not a Saturn square. So as long as you're getting that rest and recuperation with that Saturn in the 12th, it's actually going to help you overcome some of that. But this can also be like lower back, blood sugar stuff, kidney things. Like, are you having any of that stuff going on? Because you're a Libra. Like, you need to be drinking your dandelion tea. You need to be taking cranberry supplements. You need to be stretching out your lower back. You start having health problems only when you're taking on too much for other people. What perfect timing now that Mercury is going retrograde all through this Libra stuff, and you're having not 1, not 2, but 3 Mercury returns. So Mercury is going back and forth over your natal Mercury. I look at this and I'm like, cool. Are you in a relationship? Do you have a partner? Are you in a committed relationship? Are you married? Where are they at? Because the Mercury retrograde is literally about returning, having a conversation with partners and being like, look, I can't, I need help. I need more rest. Being that also the retrograde is very close to your sun, it can be bringing in healers, bringing in people to help organize, help clean up houses, you know, watch babies, things like that. So you feel like you can kind of get back on track. I feel because you are also going through Neptune in Pisces in your first house, square Neptune in your 10th house, there is like a sense of like some old things fading away and like new things coming in. Being that you have Mars conjunct your midheaven in Sag and Neptune is there as well, like your energy levels kind of, they come and go. I'm wondering what have you done versus what do you want to do? Because making money, like look, Jupiter's going to go into your second house next year. So there is more resources coming. But with Jupiter in a pretty complex trine with Neptune right now, it makes me feel like that you're like, am I ever going to figure it out? Where is it going to come from? And like there can be a sense of like spiraling. And you're going to have Mars going retrograde in your 4th house. So for all Pisces risings, quite challenging because you're going to have Mars going back and forth, stirring things up at home. It's going to oppose your natal Neptune, and it's going to square Neptune. So that tells me that there's just things are changing at home, things are changing with you, things are changing with work. Like that's the name of the game when we see mutable squares. But for a Libra, Mars being 9 houses from your sun, which is expansion, learning things that are new, like studying something, traveling somewhere. I'm looking at this being like, okay, how do you make lemonade? You know, can you be doing some training or teaching or something from home? Do you take a program? Do you decide that you want to start yard sailing, antiquing, something like that? Because Mars rules your 2nd house of objects. I know it may not sound like glamorous type stuff, but I wonder where you're either running a business out of the home, where you're able to do something where you're, you know, organizing homes, clearing homes, something like that. If you want to go back to school, you're doing it from home, right? At a keyboard, Gemini. And for many Libra placements, just in general, going back to school, back to learning something that is the Mars retrograde, but you want to give yourself clear until like the new year to kind of either pick a school or finish a program. So it's not anything that you're going to rush through because that Mars square Neptune tells me that you're going to have energy levels that are going to come and go. You need like a study at your own pace kind of thing, you know? Next year, and this is where I'm trying to be more optimistic, like Jupiter fully going into Aries and trining your midheaven and also trining your Neptune is actually really nice. Like it makes me feel like money stuff's actually a lot better for you in like March, April. But until that point, I think the the Mercury retrograde in your 7th is where are you explaining to other people that you need help, right? You need some help, that you need more support, or you need them to kind of show up for you. And you need rest until Saturn leaves your 12th house. So you do need to be making sure you're getting more time to go to sleep, or you do need to be making sure you're taking naps or you're going to bed early, unfortunately, because that's what's going to help you kind of get over this hump with some of the health issues. And you want to do this, and you're learning how to do this regularly, maybe how to get into a nighttime routine as Saturn is in a trine to your sun. You know, for Libras also, Neptune is 6th house to our sun right now. So that's also kind of saying, like, where are we too daydreamy? Where are we, you know, looking at screens or spending too much time doing things? Or what are we eating? Like, what is our routine like daily that's like not allowing us to feel fully checked in? So whether that's something you're eating, it could be some dietary stuff, or just not making the time to meditate or take, you know, take breaks. That's the problem. But I would say look at ways that you can be making money at home or studying at home over these next couple of months. And like I said, it sounds silly, but, you know, I look at Mars being your possessions, going retrograde in the second, like in the fourth. You could literally go to estate sales and you could buy stuff cheap and resell it. And you would make money. Like, that's something you could do. Or you could have yard sales and sell that stuff. Or you could post that stuff and be like, hey, come and pick it up. And maybe you make, you know, $50 or $100 off a dresser, but you do that regularly and you're going to have some extra cash. And you're going to be making money, Mars, off of things other people are just getting rid of, right? Fourth house. Hopefully that's helpful. Good luck with getting a nap in. All right, so we've got Hugh. Am I saying this right? Hugh Lim? I'm botching it. I'm sorry, but I hate it when people pronounce my name wrong, so I would rather ask. Okay, I think I gotta add you, so let me put this in here. September 7th, 1996. Happy belated. One 14 p.m. There you go. All right. All right, so date of birth, September 7th, 1996, 1:14 p.m. in Singapore. During the December 2021 new moon Sag, my company informed me that I was to be restructured into another team. This came full circle in the full moon in Sag this year in June. I was informed that my contract won't be renewed, so my contract is ending at the end of the month. I live in the Netherlands and I'm dependent on my work country for my visa. It's expiring at the end of this month. In August, I received a job offer. However, I've not been able to sign the contract because the company discovered that they do not yet fulfill the requirement to sponsor my visa, although they aim to eventually. Right now, this is still delayed. And the last information I got on Friday was that the company is trying their best to hire me temporarily via payroll company, afterwards transfer me back to the company's payroll. However, they still have not signed any agreement with the payroll company. So yeah, okay, so basically you're waiting to hear back if they're going to be able to bring you in so you can like maintain your visa. Sounds really annoying. Sounds like the Mercury retrograde happening in your 10th house. You know, this Mercury retrograde, very stressful for Sag risings, okay? Especially if you have any placements that are in Gemini. So you don't, so right now, just to simplify this, Mercury is documents, okay? Mercury is going retrograde. It actually stationed at 8 degrees, which is some kind of change and transformation, especially involving money. I am curious, when Mercury goes retrograde, look, I mean, if you're watching this now, pay attention to what happens tomorrow, because the moon's going to conjunct Jupiter and it's going to oppose, and you might get another email or something. But when Mercury opposes Jupiter, which is your chart lord, which will be on the 18th, and then it comes into your natal degree, which will be on the 19th. And then when the sun, which is legal, anything in relation to, you know, paperwork, 9th house, travel, the Kazimi. It might be just in the nick of time, actually. The 22nd through the 25th, you might actually have on paper a job as of the 25th. You'll have to like come back and comment and let me know, because I have a feeling it's going to be right down to the wire. But with that new moon in conjunction to Mercury, which is about a job, starting something new suddenly, the opposition to Jupiter at a 3, I have the paper in hand, making it possible for me to live somewhere. And also it's going to be in a trine to your natal Jupiter and your moon. Wow. It might be like right in the nick of time, to be honest with you. Now, Mercury's not going to go direct until the 2nd, so it might be a sense of them being like, yes, we've processed it, but we're waiting to actually get you the document. So I wonder / speculate, do you have to wait until the 13th through the 17th to have that document? Do they say to you, hey, we can't get it to you until, you know, the 2nd or maybe even the 3rd week of October? Can you spend time in another country, and then once we've processed this, we'll give it to you and you come back, right? It's literally going to come down to something like that. But the odds are in your favor in terms of getting a job, right? I do think that that is the case. I will tell you, like, long term though, okay, because Jupiter is your chart lord, it's trying to bring you home, wherever home may be. And even though Jupiter's going retrograde, I don't know if you can stop this train next year when, you know, Jupiter comes into conjunction with your Saturn around January of next year, and then it comes into conjunction with your South Node. So you might get something for a short period of time. You might get a temporary visa. You might have to, you know, leave and then come back. You might kind of go, you know what, I can't deal with the inconsistencies. You know, I'm either going back home and I'm going to re-strategize where I'm going, or I'm going to go to a foreign land again. It's a lot because Mars retrograde for Virgos changes with work partnership. So there's no guarantee, or something might be temporary is kind of the vibe that I'm getting. But to me, it makes me feel like the Mercury retrograde back and forth over your Mercury, especially at a 3, it's about having 2 choices, 2 options. Here's a bit of advice. Apply for other jobs. Apply for other things. Not just because you seem to want to stay there, but there seems to be like a third party. Whether that's like you're waiting for the documents to go through another person and then get back to you, or you're literally going back and forth between 2 jobs, that new moon is going to tell you everything. And like I said, it may come just in the nick of time. Even if it's a matter of taking a job, like Mercury retrograde, if you're like, okay, I can do a short-term thing. I know that may not be what you want to do, but if you're like, if I can secure something and I know I have a job for the next 6 months or whatever, you know, I can figure out what I want just so I can stay, I'm okay with that. But this new moon will be right after the Cazimi. So the hot zone is going to be the 22nd of September through the 25th. That's when you're going to get your answer. I think with the oppositions to Jupiter, it's very likely that it's going to be something positive, but you also might start looking at applying to jobs in other countries, and something might actually show up and manifest for you. And you might be like, well, this is an adventure because it's going to square your Jupiter, but it's also going to square your moon. So it's also like, am I going somewhere where I'm happy with the pay? Is it going to be enough money, right? I think being a Sag rising, it's like kind of go big or go home. But having all that Libra in your 10th house and a lot of the fate of your jobs being dependent on other people, kind of being wishy-washy, and the fact that you're going to have Mars going retrograde, pretty much 10 houses from 10 houses from your sun, it's going to be quite agitating. So I kind of feel like there might be a sense of you going back and forth between 2 people, to be honest with you, and you're having to kind of do something that might be temporary. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know. There's a lot of people tonight that I'm like, man, it's like a cliffhanger. I'm really interested to see what happens. But it was such a great example of Mercury retrograde. Just the fact that it's like, am I going to get the document? You know, Mercury's going retrograde in the 10th house, but the fact that it's hitting your North Node, ruled by Venus, and then Venus comes into conjunction, and Venus is money, and it's a job, and it's an office. Like, you might just actually get lucky. You might get it. You're welcome. Good luck. Okay, so we've got Christinina. I say this wrong every time, and you still come back. Let's see. Let me plug you in here. I'm gonna call you Chris, so I don't botch your name. I hope you don't mind. 122583. 4:41 p.m. All right, and that was in Puerto Rico. All right, I really want to ask if I can manifest a healthy pregnancy with this new moon. If that question is not allowed, I'd like to know if I can be able to save and straighten out my finances. No, I'm pretty good at predicting pregnancy. Let's do it. So let me do a little bit of math here. So pull up your annual perfection. So you're 38 this year. You'll be 39 in December. Okay, so 38 is going to be your third house year, ruled by Mercury. You've got Mars going into your third house. Next year will be your fourth house year, which is great for home, pregnancy, babies. Really, the next 2 years are good, but okay. So pregnancy, your fifth house lord, ruled by the sun. You've got Jupiter that's in a square to your sun, where you're like, I really want to do it, but I'm anxious as to whether or not it's going to work or if it's going to happen. Jupiter in the 12th makes me feel like you need faith, like you need to pray. There needs to be like a nighttime routine, anything like that in regards to pregnancy. I also think that Jupiter coming into conjunction with your ascendant is also a really good indication of pregnancy. And it's really strong for you closer to like January, February, but Jupiter is going to be in your first house all next year. Now, Jupiter is, again, going to come into a square with your sun. Usually we need to see more than one aspect. And Venus will come into a square with your sun, and Mars will oppose your sun. Here's a question that I have. Pregnancy with where you're living right now, do you feel like you need to move? Do you need to change your home? Like, what's the deal? Like, think it through, because Jupiter on your ascendant, it's a pretty good indication you could make this happen. Also, Jupiter that will come into a trine with Neptune, is if that's really what you want. But I have a feeling that it's going to require you to take a little bit of a step away from like professional stuff, right? Because Neptune conjunct the sun rules the fifth house. Like, you need rest, recuperation. You can't be working 24/7. You can't be feeling like you need to be focused on your career. Kind of hard for a chart like this with a lot of cardinal. You know, you like to stay busy. Pregnancy and maternal things is also relating to the moon. So I'm looking at, in this next year, you know, Jupiter and Uranus are going to start coming into a trine with your moon as well. But it tells me something has to kind of change about your work schedule. Now, once your birthday hits in a couple of months, then you're going into a fourth house year ruled by the moon. So that tells me when there are transits to your natal moon, that is going to amplify things. Well, Neptune's not opposing it any longer. Saturn's not going to oppose it yet. You've got Uranus that's trining it. And I have a feeling that like when the sun and Uranus are trining your moon, that you could be like, oh my God, pregnancy, or oh my God, baby, like something's going like that. Okay, you really want to move, but your husband doesn't. I don't have the finances to initiate the move on my own. I've been working extra overtime. Okay, so I'm not saying you can't do both, but the problem, when I look at this chart, more so relates to the fact that not all things can like kind of coexist. You know, like you can work and have a kid. You can also like have a kid and live in a house and realize you're going to outgrow it and then move. But not all things can happen at the same time with this chart. That's kind of the challenge here. Pregnancy, you know, I would say you're in Virgo season, you got Venus trine your moon, there's like a lot of stuff happening there, but you're having retrogrades going on in your seventh. Like you need to work out some of the stuff in terms of like talking to your partner about, you know, how can we find ways to schedule things, plan things. Like Mercury going retrograde in your seventh into your sixth, literally in a square to your sun tells me that you guys aren't on the same page about whether or not you guys are working and having a kid, or working and saving, or, you know, saving and not moving. Like you guys have to get on the fence, get off of the fence with that, unfortunately. Fun fact, your 10th house is your career, but it's the home base or the family of your partner. So I'm wondering, does he like the house? Does he not want to leave the house? Is he close to his family? Like, what's the deal? And is he on the same page in regards to communicating and talking about having kids? Or having another kid if you have not already. But I think with Mercury opposed Jupiter in a square to the sun, you guys need to get on the same page. If he wants to have kids, I would be like, okay, cool. Well, if we need to move, when do we do that? Do we have a kid first? Do we save? Like, you guys need to have that conversation, because that is going to clear up a lot of fears or insecurities about some of this stuff. And I have a feeling that right around the time that that full moon is kicking in the new year, like that could be a pregnancy announcement, right? Because like I said, now you're going to be really strongly affected by the moon. So here we have a full moon around early February, and that full moon is going to be in Leo in your 5th house. It's going to trine Jupiter on your ascendant. So I definitely think that, yeah, it's likely. I mean, you have to look at your progress chart and also your solar return. He's very close to his family. We all live in the same house, and he doesn't want more children. Okay, so literally the T-square is that stuff. So it's like, what I'm saying is this. I'm not telling you what to do, but take that into consideration, because a pregnancy is very possible with Jupiter on the ascendant, but it's going to send the partner into a tailspin, because it's going to then square his sun. It's going to square the sun, which is him, and also Mercury, where it's going to create more chaos in the family. So it's like, don't use the pregnancy to prompt getting him out of the house, because it's just going to create more tension within the home. So maybe it's sitting down and being like, I want these things. Do you want these things? You don't want these things? Well, I do. So we got to find a middle ground. It's about finding ways to negotiate in the relationship, you know? And personally, with Uranus coming in opposition with your Venus in this next year, and you're coming out of Saturn square Saturn, I just want you to know that you can work, make the money, get the promotion, do all those things. You're very capable of doing that. I think you're going to be making changes either in your living situation or your work, possibly in the new year with that Mercury retrograde. But you need to kind of talk to him about planning. Talk about planning, because if you just wind up pregnant and he's like, I'm not moving out of this house because I want to be close to my family, and you wanted to move and you wanted the baby, now you're stuck, it's going to be really overwhelming, right? Just a word to the wise. And also, if the kid comes first and you stay there, it may take you possibly until your 4th house annual perfection year to get into a much different living situation, which would then be 1 more year. Just knowing that, like, you're going to be in moving from your 3rd to your 4th house, and that Mars is going to come into an opposition, like, you may get to next spring and be like, we're outgrowing this, we need to make a change. So maybe it's time to sit down and talk to him and be like, look, I want to have another kid and I want to move. Like, where can we find the middle ground? And possibly it would, I think this is just me, like Jupiter on the ascendant is a great pregnancy transit. So it makes more sense to be like, if it means having the kid and being like, okay, I know you want to be close to your family, but we are going to have our own family. So can we live close? How can we plan that? It's a smarter move, you know? And timing-wise, you're fine too. Like, until you have like Saturn and Neptune start squaring your sun, that could be, I'm not a doctor, but that could be having issues trying to conceive. So if this is like a timing thing, you know, like 2025 going into 2026, maybe. It can be more challenging with Saturn and Neptune coming into a square with your sun, but like you got another like 2-ish, 3 years here that it's still very feasible. But part of me feels inclined to tell you, like, yeah, Uranus trine your moon and Jupiter on your ascendant, like pregnancy, you know? Hope that's helpful for you. Good luck. Good luck. All right, so let's see, who else do we have here? What's up, Sam? Long time no see. How are you? Okay, so Aileen. I see you sent 2. I'm assuming there's 2 questions. Live reading astrology question. You called it. Leo season got crazy for me. My ex-husband has lost it because I introduced our son to my boyfriend after 5 months of dating instead of 6 months per our separation agreement. We've been divorced for years and live completely separate lives. I didn't think it'd be such a big deal, but he flipped and got an attorney threatening to sue me for breach of contract. However, my attorney has not heard a peep from his attorney in 3 weeks, and neither have I. He's been a real ass and is Difficult to deal with. Is he up to something? Is he going to drop this? It's been well over 6 months, so he does not have a case. Who knows? If that's not some Mercury retrograde and Libra shit, I don't know what is. Let's take a look. Okay. And I paid for astrology reading 15 minutes ago. I forgot to include my details. No worries. Okay, I've got your info. Girl. The tea. What's going on with your sun right now? That's your 7th house. Okay. So we've got Jupiter in a slight square, which can be law-related things. I actually think it's more the Mars shadow. Mars being in your whole sign 5th house of dating, going back and forth between two people, also a child, a kid, you know, something like that. And anything in regards to where you hold back or not. The moon is going to deal more so with like anything in regards to like legality and like lawsuits. And looking at these transits, I'm also wondering if Mercury going retrograde in conjunction to Pluto is going to bring up some power struggles with old relationships, especially like the 15th of September through the 29th. Putting a real emphasis on like the 28th, 29th, because you're going to have the Sun conjunct Pluto, and then you're going to have Venus conjunct Pluto, and then you're going to have the Sun conjunct Pluto. Quite frankly, like, that's some I mean, obviously he got his feelings hurt. If you're going to go to court over that, it's just clear it's like a control thing. That's why I'm bringing up Pluto. And also like Sun square Pluto stuff too. You want to watch for. I don't think a lot of this is going to be sorted out more until like mid-October. Intuitively, I kind of feel inclined to tell you, like, I feel the grand finale could be in mid-October when the Sun and Venus come into a square with Pluto in the 12th house, and it's like somebody not dealing well with the fact that they don't have control over the situation, you know? Is he going to be able to get you for breach of contract because of something that happened a month short? I don't know. But I think the Mars retrograde is also, you got to be careful because it can really upset the apple cart with your current partner. And a current partner could kind of be like, I don't want to deal with this shit, you know? Like, I can only talk to you during certain times, or like I can only come over during certain times. Like, there's going to be something like that going on. The day the shadow started, you got to know. Okay. I mean, he can try. But I have a feeling because your moon right now is not being totally affected. I mean, yeah, you got Mercury square the moon. It's literally the conversation. And you've got Pluto square the moon natally. So every single time Mercury goes through that, you're going to see another piece of the puzzle unfold, unfortunately. So September 15th and 16th. And October 14th and 15th, you know? My actual partner is actually all in it with me, not going anywhere. It's also probably bothering my ex a lot. Yeah, I mean, but I just think that I would say take this as a warning, not to like allow him to dictate things, your ex, but take this as a warning that's like he's going to hold you, because that's what the Mercury retrograde is. It's like he's going to hold you accountable for stuff, especially because the moon is in the 6th. It's about lawsuits. And Jupiter is in opposition, so it's amplifying that. You may see next year when Jupiter opposes Pluto again, and maybe when the Sun is in a square around New Year's, and maybe around the end of March, he kind of pipes up a little bit again, especially because Mars is coming into conjunction with your moon. So it's like, if it's not one thing, it's going to be something else. You know, I kind of get the impression because it's at a 6, it's going to be kind of like getting corrected and being told like, hey, this is what we agreed to, you can't do it. And it's a warning that whatever else you guys have agreed to down the line is going to definitely be something that's going to come under the microscope. Mercury rules children for you, so Mercury going retrograde. One other thing I would say is like, you don't want to be telling your kid something and then being like, don't tell dad. because during the retrograde, it's going to come out, or you're going to see that somebody's going to be trying to pry information out of him or taking information out of him. And clearly that person is just threatened, you know? Unfortunately, the sun rules your 7th house and it's in the 12th. So it's saying that you have learned that some of your partners end up kind of being people who, unfortunately, are your enemies, or they kind of take advantage of you, or they end up putting you in a situation where, especially somebody who you had a kid with or you were married to because your sun Juno. Yeah, it's just, unfortunately, it's just kind of the astrology. I hate to be like that. And the square to Chiron, you know? And currently you're going through Pluto in a square to Uranus, and that's where all of this potential like legal and law stuff is kind of coming up as well. So it'll be interesting to see right around the mid-October period, because you're going to have the Sun and Venus. There's going to be a Sun-Venus conjunction for several days, actually. It's going to start like on the 19th. And it'll go all the way until the 22nd of October. And they will sit on your natal Uranus. So that tells me it is possible that the ex tries to show up at your house because Venus rules the 4th house. Or it's also about you finding out whether or not the ex is like, well, whatever, I've got somebody that I'm seeing now anyway. And you're like, whatever. Something like that could happen because it's Libra at the last degrees, you know, and it's going to be like the finale of the real separation. I think maybe it's also like the process of opening up and being like, I don't have control over this person anymore. You know, he got shut down possibly because of the trine to Saturn in your 1st house. And then he realizes that he can't really kind of yank your chain and take control anymore. I think you'll be really pleased when Pluto comes out of a square with your natal Uranus. You're not going to have so many issues going on with other people, potentially legally. That's going to start to kind of fade away for you in the new year, and then things are going to get a little bit easier. But that Mars retrograde in your 5th, I mean, I'm glad to hear things are going well with you and your partner. I hope it stays that way. I want to see you in a relationship and happy, and like also your kid happy. But there's one thing that I would watch for, and that's when Mars goes retrograde in your 5th, because there can be changes in relationships, and it's going to trine Uranus. And I feel like you can't let your ex in any way kind of intervene in the relationship or have contact with the person you're with. And if anything, knock on wood, were to change in regards to your relationship, that's not something that you would want to, like you wouldn't want to give your ex the privilege of knowing that. Because the trines to Uranus makes me feel like he's going to be like, that's what you get. You know, like you're going to hear about it, basically. You're going to get a lecture because it's going to be making aspects to Uranus. Hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, I kind of feel like it might be like a warning and a back and forth that doesn't materialize into anything, but him eventually realizing that he doesn't have as much say as he thinks. Because I get that he's got you by a technicality, but I don't think it's going to play out that way from what it's looking like on my end. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Very Mercury retrograde in Libra in the 8th house. Especially like money owed. So when you say, you know, taking you back to court or suing you, like he means it, but it would also possibly be something in relation to child support or, you know, custody. Like those would be things that I'd be more concerned about, you know. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Good luck. Look at those dates when that comes back around. Okay, SR, I got you. Thank you for being patient. So this is for your son, Brandon. August 20th, 1997. And that was 3:47 p.m. Liverpool. Okay. He has Pluto hitting his Neptune in the 12th house. Will he be able to find some relief or outlet from this? It's turned his life upside down and himself too. He's discovering a little bit. This transit goes on for years. When does it settle? Right now he's struggling with addiction, lost work. He knows he's on a path he doesn't want to be on. Pull is too strong right now. Awesome. I'm happy to help. Okay. Well, So Pluto, you know, it is intercepted for him. That's part of this. So if you look at traditionally whole sign, right? If you're Aquarius rising, Scorpio rules the 10th. So it is about the power of parents, the power of authority figures. So it can be cops, judges, lawyers, all kinds of stuff. It could be a parent. So the reason why it's challenging for him is because it's not just Pluto conjunct Neptune. It's Pluto conjunct Neptune in the 12th house, which is subconscious. It's dealing with like spiritual crisis, private hidden things, even crime. Sure, it can be drugs, but it can be about honesty and whether or not he's being honest, because Neptune rules the mind. So could he be taking mind-altering drugs? Yeah, but is he lying about it? Is he stealing stuff? Is he hiding stuff, right? And that's the concern that I'm really looking at, and where that can land him in jail. 12th house is jail. It's also that Pluto conjunct Neptune is square his midheaven at 28 degrees. So that's about legality and law, balance, fairness, partnerships. And it's squaring his IC, right? 28 degrees of Aries. So it's almost like I would remind him that he can get himself into some situations that even his parents can't get him out of. And be like, look, if you get caught doing drugs, or if you get arrested, or if you're stealing something or whatever, like, and you go to jail, or if you commit a crime, like, I'm not gonna be able to bail you out of that. 12th house can also be churches, temples, healing centers, rehabs. Like, it doesn't just have to be a hospital. And he's got Neptune in conjunct or quincunx Sun. Sun is about 7th house relationships. I'm wondering, is he having a difficult time in relationships? Is he having a difficult time relating to people? Does he not have a good relationship with his dad? Does he not see eye to eye with him? Is he feeling isolated in that he doesn't have the relationships he wants, right? Because on the other side of this, we've also got, you know, Saturn in opposition to his sun. Saturn is his 12th house ruler, and it's his ascendant ruler. So he may feel like, where is a partner when I need them? Where is my dad when I need him? Something like that is going on there. The one thing that is positive, that is kind of interesting about his chart, is he has Neptune at 27, his moon at 22 Pisces. So they sextile each other. So you've got a Pisces moon, super sensitive, sextile Neptune, super sensitive. And that all sextiles each other and inconjuncts his sun. Quincunx is his sun. That's a yod. So people come into his life to kind of help him learn how to make sense of his addictions or his loss, learn how to make sense of his emotional hangups. Like, he needs other people, like for a sounding board, like he needs therapists, or he needs a mentor, or he needs like an actual partner or somebody who can hold him accountable. Like, I kind of look at this and I'm like, would he be a good candidate for AA? You know, would that be a good idea for him? Because partnership and accountability is going to help him go a long way. And some of this behavior, you know, Pluto transit Neptune doesn't mean that you have to spiral into addiction. You have to understand that's a generational placement there. People from the late 80s into the 90s, you know, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Uranus, and for some of us it's Saturn, all in Capricorn. So what you're dealing with is Neptune in a sign that's very much about long-term patterns of addiction. You know, let's go deep. Let's look at the lineage. Like, have people in the family had issues with their mental health or with addiction? Does it run down the line? Also, it's about not feeling like he's in control and he can't control something, or he can't control his thoughts, or he can't control his mind. So he takes substances. And I think it's because he's having a difficult time relating to other people. And even though he's a 7th house sun, he doesn't really know how to be in relationship. He kind of sees people at afar. So throwing him into relationships where maybe he does have a sober companion or a buddy, or he does have somebody that he checks in regularly with, like a therapist. So he's like learning to have that other person to bounce stuff off of to help him through that. Believe it or not, Pluto's been in conjunction to his Neptune for like a while. It's been close since 2020. I mean, it's been several years. So now Pluto is getting ready to go into Aquarius in the new year, so it's going to start easing up. But It'll still retrograde back to Capricorn, but basically like come the new year and then into 2023, it's pretty much easing off its Neptune. So it's been hanging out there for a little while. Then it's going to come for Uranus. Okay, so then you've got Pluto coming in conjunction with Uranus, which is still in his 12th house, but it's conjunct the ascendant. This is, I think, more going to be about mental health. And if he's had mental health issues that has not been dealt with, where it affects him emotionally, or it affects his love life, or it affects his heart space or his heart center, 2026 on. And then he's got Pluto crossing the ascendant. So I'm wondering what's going on at the core here. Saturn square Neptune, having issues communicating and being able to express ideas. Does he deal with depression, right? Like, is there some sense of him feeling people don't understand? And if this isn't dealt with and you don't start focusing on working through the sobriety stuff now and some of the 12th house stuff, if left unattended in several years' time, it could be pretty serious. You know, Pluto conjunct Uranus, Pluto conjunct the ascendant. I mean, I have seen that for some people as having real extreme issues with their mental health, and some of them have been some of them have been like suicidal. You know, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I have to keep saying that, but I've seen that in some transits, especially because then Pluto's going to square his Mars. You know. He's a Pisces moon with moon conjunct the south node, so he has issues with security. He shouldn't be drinking. I have a theory Pisces moon should not be drinking alcohol. I think it's not good for them. I think it affects their moods too much, especially conjunct the south node. So yeah, it's like therapy, sobriety, you know, take him to a Buddhist temple. I know that sounds crazy, but Pluto on his Neptune is, where does he go and learn and work with somebody either in a therapy setting or like in a spiritual setting where he learns that void that he's feeling can not necessarily be fixed or filled, but it needs to be understood as like a holding space. Many people go through this transit, or I've spoken to tons of people, so I'm just guaranteeing you, like I've seen a lot of people go through this transit. I have Pluto, I have Neptune in Capricorn, actually. I went through the transit. It's conjunct Saturn, so when Pluto conjuncted it, it's a little different for me, but that's when there was a real profound shift in my life, and I was like, I need to have this path. Like, I have to do this, you know. Ironically, it's like got me sober and got me like out of a lot of issues with a bunch of stuff, you name it. So he asked me to take him to a Buddhist temple. Yeah. The 12th house is the temple space, right? Pluto can be somebody who talks to you about life and death and transformation and purpose. So if he's asking you to take him, why don't you take him? Because it's right on for his transits. It can be really helpful. And I feel with Jupiter on his ascendant in opposition to the sun, and just that Pisces moon, he's working through this stuff at his own time, and very likely it could possibly be something that he could get a lot of like mentorship from somebody, and it may play a huge role in his life where he ends up helping and holding space for other people. You know, he's got Pluto and Mars in the 10th house and Chiron in the 10th house. Likely he will decide to go into some kind of healing modality. It might take a little bit. It's going to take a little bit, but that might be something he ends up doing. Yeah. Yeah, he'll go. Yeah, take him soon. And like maybe, like I said, he needs partnership. So going with him, maybe you guys go, you know, once a week or whatever. Go. I mean, it's kind of cool. Or like the Hare Krishnas also, you know, you can go, you can give your offerings, you can do your mantras, your meditations, you have a family feast, right? Kind of similar stuff. If he's got companionship and if he's got some assistance and some help in realizing that he can come together with other people, he's not going to feel so alone, right? But I'd be more concerned about the transits after that conjunction. I'd be more concerned about if left unattended until 2025 to 2027, then what happens? So we're in the time where we can work through it now. And with Saturn square Pluto, it's about expressing the fact that he feels like he's alone, you know? And he's got Chiron in the 10th. Square his Neptune and also oppose his Saturn. So many of these people do go into some kind of healing modality, healing professions, maybe some kind of therapy or helping people kind of get realigned, you know? Hopefully that's helpful. I I hope he goes. It's a really magical experience to be able to go and become a part of any kind of group, you know, that practices of any kind of faith or spirituality. But Buddhist temples are super, super cool. And I wonder if there's something locally that's going to be almost like non-denominational or all-inclusive for people who want to start getting into that. There's a book called Dharma Punks. I mean, how old is he? 1997. There's a book called Dharma Punks. I'm pretty sure that's the title. Look it up. It's a great book that can be really helpful for him learning about that. Dharma Punks. I'm positive I read this book. Oh no, yeah, Dharma Punks. Yeah. Okay, so there was a center when I was in LA. That's what it was from, and they have them in New York. And there's a book, but basically it's like a way of being able to like teach it to people who are younger and like more like kind of alternative. I don't know if that's what he is, but he's an Aquarius rising. So I don't know, maybe get him a book and see if he's interested in it. And maybe that's going to give him enough, interest into going and getting involved. Okay. Yeah, look it up. See, Sam, it's not just me. It's a whole generation of people who have that. I did a video on the Saturn, Neptune, Uranus people. It was more specific for like the 88 to 94, but still, it's on my videos. It's my most viewed video that I made like years ago. Horrible lighting, really bad, but still, I talk all about that conjunction, what it means, and why these people are different, and why that group of people reincarnated to like pretty much help rebuild society. So. Just know if you've got a lot of Saturn placements or Capricorn placements, there's like some kind of maturity. It's like you have like this glow up like post 31 and things get a lot better because you've gone through so much karmic stuff. Okay? Hopefully that was helpful. I am pretty sure I did not miss anybody. In the off chance that I did, I'll give everybody just a minute just to chime in. That was a long one. Thank you guys for staying with me. Tomorrow I've got a new video coming out. It's all going to be about some of the mutable squares this week. We've got a yod also. If you haven't already seen my Mercury retrograde video, check it out. If you are still wondering why the vibe is funky, it's because the full moon's lasting until tomorrow-ish. So there's a video for that as well. Next week we're going to be doing live tarot readings on Saturday. We're always here Saturdays at 7 o'clock Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, my brain is fried. And one other thing is if you like the way that I read, if you like my reading style, if you want to learn more about reading astrology or tarot, check out my website. I have a beginner's course that I do over 18 hours of lecture on astrology. I have another one for tarot. I'm going to start an intermediate astrology like course basically in the new year. I'm doing a webinar that's all on relationship astrology that I'm doing later this month in 2 parts. And yeah, if you guys want to learn with me, check out my website. I would be happy to teach you what I know of astrology to help make sense of the cosmos. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you all very soon. Take care.